Yes, sir. Greetings, caller in Florida.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I have quite a bit, so I'm gonna try and break it up as best as I can. The earlier, not this week, but last week, it was definitely a lot of racism going on because I was, and I figured this was going to happen because we have this confidential bin, like a recycling bin, and I think people have assumed that I do this, and it's for like the juvenile department. Their documents, if anybody knows, that's confidential. Juvenile cases are confidential, so they don't go in regular recycling bins. So the top white woman that I've been given the code name, the warden, like, and I want to be emphatic about this because, like, I know Gus, you played that audio segment about white women being pained, and, acting like they disenfranchised and they're victims. They're definitely not victims, because this is a good example. Like, she had asked me in an email and included my supervisor, another white woman, by the way. And I will say that she does listen, at least when I have these reports about mistreatment. And I've been using that word injustice. It's definitely been effective and unjust. I think Mr. Fuller mentioned that term. So she said, like, if there's any, incidents of injustice, I could just, like, come let her know about it. So she asked me about this email. So I said, like, could you please give me a second? And then she says, well, okay. And she goes to sit down in our office. So it took me about maybe 45 seconds before I could gather my thoughts. I printed out the email, and I went to go speak to her about this. It's, I believe, July, the 5th. Now, this happened maybe like June the 28th. And the initial email about this had been going on ever since June the 14th. So apparently, the people in the juvenile department had an arrangement with somebody from another department to do this job. Okay. And apparently, the bin didn't get empty. So, no surprise that another black person, myself, was made a candidate, okay, to be volunteered to do this. So my supervisor wasn't informed. I wasn't informed. So I'm telling her about this, that I don't have any jurisdiction over this task. And, I told her, to summarize it, I told her that that's on somebody else. So she sent back a response saying that, can you have another person, I guess another male person, I guess, because it's more laborers, to do that on that side of the building, because I'm on another side. And then, so I run into the white woman, okay, and she tells me that, hey, you know what, don't worry about doing this. Like, don't worry about doing it because the people are gone who's supposed to come pick up the shredded paper. Now, but she never gave a email, text response. Okay, so the next day she asked, and this is retaliatory right here. The next day she asked, could I bring her the keys to the truck vehicle? So in a courteous manner, I go and hand her the keys. But she said in the email I hand the keys to her assistant. But I was like, no, I'll hand her the keys. Okay, so she uses the keys from 2 to 4. She said in the email she's going to use the 2 to 4. Now, I had an immediate suspicion right there because I go and complete a job or do a job, take the mail a little after 4. So I suspect that she wasn't going to come back in time, which I was explaining this last week. So she failed to be back on time and disrupted my job on Wednesday evening, and was also subversive that next morning too. And when she came in, she was waving the keys, and I was on the phone with my mom from the other building called me, and the facial expression was very nasty, and like very like just toxic or whatever, very contemptuous toward me. She was rolling her eyes and everything. It was very revealing emotionally. So she goes downstairs, and I asked my supervisor, like, should I just wait here or whatever for to bring the keys back? And she said, yeah, that'll be okay. And then 2 minutes later, she says she left the keys in the truck. So she comes back upstairs to walk past my apartment and doesn't even bring us the keys back. But I gave her the keys. Remember now, when I had initially gave them to her for her to borrow them. So on that Friday, it was last Friday, I typed out this. It was a huge email, and I said, I'm ready to do this. This is not just no regular employee. This is the top. This is even the two white men. They were saying that they were proud of my promotion. Even took a picture with me. She didn't care about none of that. She didn't take no pictures, no congratulations. I got the new desk. Like, I don't care about none of that. Like, he's still a nigga to me. Like, that's basically the sentiment this person carries. Is she the person that interviewed or hired me? Nigga! So about 5 to 6 hours, they didn't really say anything to me because I think they was focused on the question I asked in the email. I said, would this be happening to a white person? Because I mentioned this person's behavior being unprofessional and unbecoming of someone of her position. So, they was kind of like real nervous. They were avoiding me. And then she tried to be nice when we had our 4th of July dinner or lunch or whatever. And my supervisor says, the administrative guy, I guess who one of the top 3 people in the office wanted to talk to us. So immediately I noticed, but I didn't say anything, that the white woman was not present. She was not in the office. So this guy's immediately, he's saying, well, I just want to let you know, like, nobody's picking on you. And Gus, I know you use that word picking on is like it's referring to some kind of child conflict on the playground or something. So he was basically talking, and he said that, like, I just disagree, and this person, she's the most unracist. He used the word unracist. I never heard that before. And she treats people right, whether they're black, purple, the usual rhetoric, green. You don't even have green people. And I use the word unprofessional and conduct. He used 2 of the words that I used in my email and said that my conduct was unprofessional for writing the email. But I had listed an example of how she listed everybody else's name in a meeting and their milestone, how many years they've been here. And when it got to me, she asked me how many years I've been here. And you know what he said? He said, what was I in there at that time? And like, I have to definitely say my supervisor was practicing racism, because she was like, I don't know if you were in there. I think, both of them was in there, because this was only like 30 days ago. See, so when you start coming with the examples, they start to play, quote unquote, play dumb. And just to more summarize it, he's like, when he was growing up, he said that he was called a nigger lover, and his sister and his mom was called that too, and told to go back to New York, to go back up north. And, saying, well, we got to work together and this and this and that, and basically trying to downplay what she said. So, and I had also, he had tried to use the word fair, and I said, you know what, it's an advantage to being white. Like, you people in here are powerful. Nobody's going to want to come in here and report acts of injustice. they may be scared. And he tried to say, oh, well, the clerk, he's only been here for a year and a half. You know, I might lose my job if somebody else runs for election. I'm like, that still don't make me and you equivalent, really. Um, Another example, you use the word fair, saying, have you ever heard of fair skin? And then my supervisor, she says, yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of it. It means light. And he was trying to play like he didn't know what that word meant. He was saying, is it something to do with my hair? Like, I don't know. And he said he would Google the term fair skin. So,
wow! Hey, yo, drama, hold up, son. Hold on. Stop the motherfucking record. All right. I want you to Pondy replay, drama. Pondy replay. Let's give him one more chance, man. Run that shit the fuck back.
Another example, you use the word fair, saying, have you ever heard of fair skin? And then my supervisor, she says, yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of it. It means light. And he was trying to play like he didn't know what that word meant. He was saying, is it something to do with my hair? Like, I don't know. And he said he would Google the term fair skin. So,
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, July 12th, 2018. So I have been told. This is our weekly broadcast, Neutralizing Workplace Racism. If we have any folks out there, if you have figured out what to do so that you are never in the situation like what we heard at the beginning where you've got white folks on the job, fair, I've never heard that. How do you spell it? Get my dictionary. I'll see if I can. Fair. Never heard so. You never have that problem. You go about getting your work done. People do not pick out random tasks to assign you to without telling you, without informing your supervisor. That never happens to you. You don't have people sabotaging what you are attempting to accomplish on your job. That never happens to you. You don't have to go and have meetings with supervisors because they're causing you all of these problems, subversive activity, as they say. You don't have to deal with any of that. You go to work. You do your job, you get your lunch breaks. If you need a day off, a week off, it's summertime, vacation. People are out frolicking and such. You get all of your vacation days, personal days, sick days, whatever it is. You get all of your raises on time, bonuses on time, never any issues. You should be the first person to call in and give us the details. And I mean specifics right down to the comma. How did you do that? What can we do to emulate your prosperity in the workplace? The number for you, and I mean you should be on speed dial, first person in, the number 641-715-3640, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. If we have victims of white supremacy, if you're having problems in the workplace, being mistreated in some way, shape, form, and you would like counter-racist logic to kind of help you evaluate what's happening and maybe figure out some suggestions on a way that you can solve this problem without creating new problems, certainly give us a ring. The number 641-715-3640, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. As I've said consistently, if you do not want to dial in via the phone line, you can always give us a ring, or you can always drop an email and I can read your commentary online. That's if you have your own situation that you would like us to address, or if you have commentary on any of the scenarios that are presented during the course of the broadcast, we can share and folks can give, whatever their comments are, thoughts, observations, suggestions regarding your situation. My email address, again, untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com. And as I said, I'll just keep an eye out as we are rolling through the broadcast, I'll read commentary as I see things pop up in my email. A few folks wrote in before we got started, so I will read their commentary to begin with. But before I even get to their commentary, I think last week I had commented about my yoga situation. Oh yes, and of course, Gus T's yoga situation. Important matters. Got to talk about that as well. But I think I mentioned last week with my yoga situation that every time I go into class, it's mostly white people. That's what I expected. And I talked about feeling almost a level of contempt, if not certainly a palpable difference in how the whites in class are treated and how myself, well, it's not that a whole lot of black people in the class, myself and like 1-2 other people, and at least in how I am treated and feeling a sizable difference between the two. And I said that last week, and I said, however, that does not stop me from going to class and acknowledging everybody. When I go in class, we had teacher training yesterday afternoon for 3 hours. As soon as I get, evening Heather, evening Roger, evening Ronald, I speak to everybody every time. Greetings, evening, or, good evening, same thing. If we're about to leave, I do that every time. I am not entirely certain. It seems that many people who listen to this broadcast or have been exposed to some aspect of counter racism as it relates to how you function on the job, somehow it gets construed as the whites that I work with are racist, which is probably true. I shouldn't speak to them at all. That is not counter-racist logic. I do not recommend that at all. That is, in my view, at least what I've seen, that is likely going to cause you problems with racists if you're not speaking. And hey, I am not a nice person. I have said that for years. I am not going to win any congeniality pageants. I think anyone who's listened to the C.O.W.S for a number of years would agree with that one. I misanthrope curmudgeon. That's all you need to know about Gus T. That said, when you're on a job situation, you did ask for the job. I did volunteer to sign up for teacher training. They did not put a gun to my head and demand that I come in for the next 8 weeks to train with them. If you volunteer, you signed up for this to do whatever the job is, you want to try to hold it until you no longer want that job or ready to move on to something else. In that end, you do want to acknowledge, and this is not about making friends. This is not about making them feel nice. It's certainly not about trying to strike up a long 5-hour conversation with them. This is just, hey, we're in the workplace together, racist or not, pals or not. You might even be a sexual predator. I am here, and I'm just going to acknowledge we are here, same space, probably be here, and keep it moving, keep it businesslike. That's all. Very important. I think that can be very helpful, especially since so many black people get accused of being aloof and not being a team player. And I've just seen where a lot of black people, victims of white supremacy, are falsely accused anyway. This can be helpful in subverting that so that people are hearing your voice, they are hearing and seeing you greet other coworkers. Nobody goes, oh my gosh, he's so rude and he just never parts his lip, or she never even talks to us. She comes in and doesn't say that. No one can ever say that. Always speaks very pleasant, calls us by name. That can be very helpful as you proceed in your career. Wanted to get that out just because over the years I've heard that a lot, where somehow it seems like I've said that a lot. Getting counter-racist information does not mean go on the job and zip your lips and never speak to anyone on the job. That is not what counter-racism on the job is about at all. But I've heard that from so many listeners, and I think even some folks last week admitted that that's a problem that they struggle with. You don't want to fall into that pattern. Racists generally can use that against us effectively, the not speaking. Next, do I want to do my yoga? I'll do my yoga portions a little later in the program since people did write in. Start getting to some of the people who wrote in. First up, black female listener. She writes, one of the managers at my department is married to a black male for reference. Insert cowbell. She is extremely racist, but is able to hide behind photos of her husband and 2 quote-unquote mixed kids on her desk. Every single black female who has worked in her particular area has either quit or been fired because of her. I have spoke to every black female who has worked under her on the day they left, and they all said it was because of her, but none mentioned the word racist when saying why. That's clearly the case. After the last black female quit, she is now picking on me. Ooh, just heard that word picking. My suggestion, we don't, if it's, especially if it's a workplace situation, and I would say racism in general, whites are not picking on non-white people. This is subversive activity, injustice, mistreatment, incorrect behavior, lots of different ways it can be described. We want to steer clear of the word picking, just as was described in the audio clip. We are not talking about a grade school situation. We are talking about terrorism on the job. Continuing. So now she is mistreating me a lot more. After speaking with everyone in my department, I was able to confirm that I am the only one she monitors. It's to the point where I would call a client, she would listen in on the call and interrupt and berate me while I'm on the line about taking too long to speak with clients. She consistently refers to black clients as dumb and ghetto, but she knows not to say the word black, so her racism goes unnoticed. She will always say they or these people, and you can tell she's talking about a black person since she starts the racist name calling after speaking to a black person. One by one and day by day, she removes things someone in my position would have authority over to purposely make my job 10 times harder. She would have IT remove certain apps and privileges, making it impossible to help a client and leaving me to have to deal with angry clients. Whenever her favorite white male employee would make a mistake, which is every day because he has not learned the system, she would try to blame me. The white male would call black customers names and curse them out, and when they would report him, she runs straight to me and accuses me of these things. I ask her, since she's monitoring me, to pull up the proof that I did these things. When she does, it shows that the white male employee was cursing people out, so she changes the subject and tries to berate me for possibly making a typo, for example. She leaves the white male employee alone. The HR person who is best friends with her told me she is collecting cans for her daughter and was digging through my trash for cans. She came up to me recently after I made sure to spit in the trash and went through my garbage. She found a can dripping with spit and just wiped it off. Now she doesn't go through anyone else's garbage, and I know for a fact it was the white female boss who has told this lady to watch me. End of her report. I think we've been talking quite a bit this summer, or at least I have, and that is connected to yoga in terms of saying that you are under surveillance on the job. Now, I don't know if I went, into as much detail to say that, yes, they might be rummaging through your trash at work. I don't think I've went that far, but I mean, being under surveillance, you should take that very, very seriously. And I think most of us, as I stated earlier this summer, we do not understand racism, white supremacy, and we do not understand how closely scrutinized we are by whites, especially in work environments. I mean, if they're digging through the trash, wow. But that's number one. Just keep that in mind. Really be mindful and try not to minimize that on any job that you're on. I mean, if it gets this explicit, then it's probably really advanced. But even if these types of things are not happening, you should just be thinking that way. With the accusations, the most important thing, particularly once you know, this is how this racist functions. She accuses black people of things that they didn't do. She tries to make it as difficult as possible for black people so that she can either fire them or aggravate them to the point where they will quit. You already know this is how she functions. The counter-racist code has got to be, number one, I've got to keep my composure. If she's someone that's going to be doing the yelling and berating, because a lot of times what they want is for you to lose your composure and get upset and yell back and retaliate or whatever it is, and then they can really terrorize you. If that means going ahead with a full termination or, putting something really big, this will be grounds for denying you a promotion or denying you a bonus, that you had that really ugly incident where you got upset, Ann was trying to give you some feedback and, you yelled at her and cursed and all that, and we had to give you a major warning and that sort of thing. Really make sure you keep your composure. The next thing with any accusation, I've said this consistently for years, take those seriously, and you just want to investigate, is this true? Not, I didn't do that. What is wrong with you crackers? And none of that. Just, well, is this true? Let's see the evidence to see that this is true. And not yelling, not cursing, very calm. And I would say especially take that approach if you know, now this is a racist who likes to blame niggers for everything. And I know she likes to blame niggers, especially me, for things that we didn't do, I didn't do. So you should practice that. Oh, okay. Let's investigate. Do we have any evidence? Are there reports that this is a phone call situation? Can we go ahead and pull up the phone call so I can see, exactly what I said? We can make improvements and address exactly what my errors were. Lean right into it. If I've been accused of something, let's check it out and see, if I did do that. And then we go to oh, that's not the case. Okay. Big proponent of retraction. I think Stacy in the UK might be with us. She's talked about that before. Any of these accusations, I would, and written retraction, the double R, that is wonderful request. Written retraction. And I'm a big advocate of emailing these anytime if there's some sort of accusation or what have you, requesting evidence. If we need to go check a phone record or pull up a file, an email or whatever it is, if we got to go and check the record to see if I did something incorrect, doing it via email, because then you have an electronic database that is being accumulated. You keep all your notes. You can print those out, add that to your workplace journal, and then you also get electronic notification of their response or lack thereof. If you're asking for a question about all this, do we have reports? Do we have emails or phone records or, whatever it is? Then you can get an email response. You could end up with a whole electronic file with this whole correspondence about whether or not, these are false charges. Those would be a couple of the things that I would recommend, in addition to, again, not having any personal effects in your work area and maybe even being mindful about what you throw in the trash can. Hadn't got that detailed before, but certainly being mindful about what you have around your desk area. I've said that before, no pictures and none of that stuff. This is the system of racism, white supremacy. If other folks have comments, suggestions for how you would deal with this white woman, what you would do in this situation, feel free. I will read one more of the emails from folks who wrote in, and then I'll get to folks who dialed in. Next email. Black female. Oh man, this is our black female who works at the university. I believe this is in the Great Virginia, so near to my heart, where she helped them get a gift that was like $500,000. And we had another white woman, the victims they are, we had another white woman who came in, schemed, one of her co-workers. She came in, schemed, and got credit for like half of this $5 million gift for the institution when she did no work. In fact, she wasted a lot of time because what did we just say? She came in making false accusations. Oh, this niggers, she messed it up. She didn't follow the right procedure. She tried to steal their $500,000. She messed everything up. And then they did the investigation and found all of these claims were false. And the white woman, the racist, still got credit for doing absolutely nothing for this $500,000 gift. And there is some sort of competition. I don't remember all the details of it, but the victim who's writing in and these other race soldiers on the job, there's a competition between folks in the office as to who can get the most money, gifts for the institution. And obviously $500,000, that is a big whopper in this sort of competition. All right, let's get the update. So the white woman who's given half credit for the $600,000 gift to the university. I learned last week that she closed a gift, a small one, $25,000 from one of my prospects whom I've been working with for years. This is the equivalent of stealing a sale from a fellow salesperson. When I discovered this, I called the AVP, racist suspect man, because my boss, racist suspect woman, was out. He seemed irritated by my call and said, "What is it? I don't know what you're talking about." Question lane. Is it permissible now for colleagues to solicit gifts from a prospect that is assigned to someone else? His answer, you know that it's not, but people do what they want. I'll look into it and get back to you tomorrow. Heard nothing the next day. I called my boss yesterday. She starts asking me accusatory questions like, if you could see that racist white woman who steals gifts and receives credit had reached out to your prospect, why didn't you say anything? My response, why wouldn't she reach out to me to inform me of what she was doing? Boss instructs me to write an email to this woman, but says send it to her first. She backhand compliments, insults me by saying, you are very articulate. Wow, major eye roll. And I'm unable to communicate what I want to say via email. Then she tells me exactly what to say in the email. I'm taking notes on the phone call. I write the email. After sending, she calls and says, this isn't ready to go out. You need to tone it down a little and tweak it. Stop by my office tomorrow and we'll discuss. I go into policy and procedure mode. Woohoo! Printing the policy, emailing questions in advance, and itemizing what our meeting should cover. Her tone during the meeting was mostly upbeat with undertones of telling me what I did wrong and could do better. When she used the metaphor, always take the high road, I said, exactly what do you mean by that, and what would that look like? Her answer was inadequate and nonspecific. I had already decided that I would tell her I'm going to rewrite the email. I already decided that I would tell her I'm not going to rewrite the email. She asked what I wanted to do instead. I said we should all meet to discuss it in person. She said okay and threw out the email. That meeting is scheduled for next week. Another backhanded compliment, veiled insult. What you have going for you is you have a very calm demeanor. Whatever that means. Patterns and expectations. They will give in to racist suspect woman. They will give her credit for the gift she stole. It will not be shared. They will continue to use this woman to make it seem as though I am not doing this or that and force me to work with her because it's uncomfortable. Beware of the compliments. They use this to disarm us. Wins. Policies and procedures diffuse their emotion and lies. Woohoo! Read that one more time. Policies and procedures diffuse their emotion and lies. Question lane forces them to answer and explain their own inconsistencies, mistreatment, and racist favorism. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is end of commentary. She says she can call in to give additional details, updates from what we heard from the email. But I can only say again, the accusations, I didn't know this when I started work career in terms of being accused of anything, any and everything. You stole this, you took this, anything that could possibly happen in the world. There were supposed to be 1,000 raindrops in Seattle today, and there were only 990. We think you stole 10 raindrops. That is the system of racism, white supremacy. So being prepared for that, I think, at least in my experience, understanding that that's what this is can go a long way to helping you not have those immediate emotional responses where you're angry, you're outraged, justifiably so, but we want to make sure that we're solving problems without creating new problems. Whites, they are experts at handling angry black people. There is a long record. I don't see too many illustrations where white people have a tough time with a black person who gets angry, really loud. In most instances, no problem. Even if you overwhelm me individually because of that Voltron effect, Mr. Fox, they will have other whites that they can call who love angry black people. I got all kinds of toys we get to try out for loud, angry black people. Got to keep your composure in that environment and questions. Be expert at being able to ask questions calmly, with a smile. What is the procedure about taking potential clients from other coworkers? Is that in policy and procedure? Maybe we need a review. Excellent at asking questions calmly and even anticipating. That's another thing that you can do, just understanding that we're in a system of racism, white supremacy. These are not my homies. I speak to them every day by name. I speak to them. However, we're not homies. We're not friends. I'm not coming to this environment thinking I'm going to be treated well. I'm not surprised. I expect them to be rifling through my desk. I expect them to be rifling through my trash can. I expect them to be rifling through my lunch if I have left it in an unsafe position. That's what this system is. Once you understand that, I think it's much easier to not be surprised, upset, irate about these type of things. You understand and expect this. These racists are going to work together, even when they're breaking the rules and messing me over on the job here. No problem. I anticipated this. I have my own plan. Even left how she said, I'd already decided I'm not rewriting this email. I already have my plan that I'm working along with counter racist logic. Lovely. If the caller the listener that wrote this feedback, if you are able to dial in, if you would like to explain how the policy and procedures help diffuse the emotion and lies, that would be great, because I think that is something that a lot of people have, asked for input or suggestions on dealing with lying whites in the workplace, how policy and procedure can help neutralize those tactics. That would be grand. If other folks have suggestions, comments on the first two scenarios that I read, I have other people wrote in as well. I'll add those as we go, and I definitely will add my yoga commentary as we proceed as well. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. First few folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have your own situation. First, if we have any non-white listeners, victims of racism, as I said, who have figured out they don't have any of these type of situations. Things are great on their job. You should be number one to dial in and give us details on how to emulate what you've done. Other folks, if you have problems, would like counter-racist perspective, feel free to dial in star 61 to get a hand up, or if you have commentary suggestions on what I have read thus far. If you have a hand up, line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Gus. Construction worker here. And my job scenario has changed. I have been terminated. And it's really interesting how that termination has occurred. It occurred, and it was said that I was late, and that I did not call and notify somebody that I was late. And so that was the reason for the termination. Now, mind you, I was late because of a traffic accident on the highway that I was behind. And I notified the person who told me that I was terminated that this was the case. And but what I decided to do is have that on record, and I decided to call my union representative and told them that I was terminated. That was the day I was terminated. The day after, I talked with my union rep again, and they got the notice of termination, and they told me to explain the scenario to them. So I told them that I was 20 minutes late, and they said, well, in this letter, it shows that you're an hour and 10 minutes late. So he, got on his Google Maps and, tracked where I was and the accident and this and that and nature. And I was actually correct in that I was 20 minutes late. So they inflated the time, number one. Number two, They told me, my employer told me that the reason that they were terminating me was because I was late, and that this was the third occurrence in my file. And so, actually, excuse me, getting a little flustered. When I had this conversation with them, they told me I was terminated. I asked them, I said, do you have all of those records? And they said, yes. I said, I have those records. They're in my file. They said, would you like them texted to you or emailed to you? And at first I wanted them texted, but for some reason I said email. I have yet to receive that email. But one reason that I wanted it from an email is because then there will be a signature of where that email was sent from. So it had been sent from an official email address, company email address, showing that this has been received. I have yet to receive that email, by the way. So let me jump back forward to talking with my union representative, who's going over this letter that they have sent, saying that I've been terminated. And it was interesting. He says that he also looked at the things that were in my file, and he says this is not the third occurrence. And he said that he believed that they were actually trying to force me out. He also said he was going to fight. He was going to file a grievance because, according to company policy, according to the specific company policy, they do not allow any of their workers on company time to be on the phone while they are in traffic. Now, I bring this scenario up to help victims, and one, so that they don't go through this scenario, but also to be aware of the methods that will be tried to be used against you, and to always follow that policy and procedure, because I did not know that policy and procedure was in their policy about not being on the phone during while being in traffic. Because the reason that he told me I was terminated was not just because I was late, but I was late and didn't notify anybody that I was going to be late. Well, how am I supposed to do that when I'm behind a traffic accident on the highway, when I'm trying not to cause any more problems than that are already there? So with that said, I actually decided to call a lawyer and told them about this, not only this scenario, but a few of the other scenarios that I have recorded. And so I asked them about filing discrimination suit, because I have a few things in terms of not just race, but being asked about my religion and why I'm not a certain religion, trying to get me to perform things unsafely, things of that nature. But after talking to this lawyer, they told me that I have a lot of work to do. They suggested that the recordings that I have, that I not only give them over to the EEOC, but also type up transcripts of each of those recordings for the EEOC, because the lawyer said that they have a crushing workload, and it'll help them work faster and to your advantage. If you were prepared, you have dates, times, you have correct punctuation, it just really helps them. But they also told me to file a complaint with my congressperson, because the program that I was gotten under for this job is federally funded with taxpayer dollars. And there is a pattern here. And one thing that I am, at least I think I'm certain about, is regardless of where Congress people sit on the political aisle, they're not too keen on the wasting of taxpayer dollars, fraud and abuse in that case. One, they don't like the waste of money. Two, it opens them up to things like this, and they really don't like that. So I'll be writing my congressperson as well. And I have a few other things to file, but I actually filed for my unemployment the day of. I have one more quick story, and then I will put my phone back on mute. I went to the unemployment office this week after 2 weeks of actually not having gotten paid. And I know there's a grace period, and right after that grace period and I wasn't paid, I made a phone call. And it's an automated service, and it doesn't put you on hold. what will say is that all our representatives are busy. Please call back, and then it will automatically hang up. So I thought that was peculiar. So the following day, I decided to call at the exact moment that the office opened, and I got the same message. So I tried 3 more times throughout the day. I got the same message. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go to an actual unemployment office. So I go to an actual unemployment office. I'm there 15 minutes before it actually opens up. I'm the first car in the parking lot. I walk in. There's an elderly white woman at the desk. She might have been in her 70s. Very, very tinted, very dark glasses. They weren't sunglasses though, so I think she might have had some vision issues. And I asked her, I said, do you need me to sign in? She said, yeah, because she pulled out the book because she didn't have it up there. I suspected that they needed me to sign in, so I'm trying to follow their procedures. And I signed in. She says, how can I help you? I said, well, I haven't been getting paid unemployment. It's been past the time. It shows my claim has been approved, but I'm not getting paid. She said, well, have you called the phone number? I said, yes, ma'am, I have. She said, well, we have some phones in the back, and if you call this number, you should be able to get somebody. Now, I have a cell phone, and I know I don't need to go to the back room with the phone to make this phone call. But what I decide to do is I decide to do that anyway. So she cannot say that I'm not complying with standards or I didn't try such and such and such. I'm just trying to exhaust all of my options before I escalate my issue. So I go back there, have my recorder, put that landline on speakerphone, dial it up, same message, and then it hangs up. So I go back to the front and I say, ma'am, I have the same thing the same issue that I've been having. She said, well, sometimes you have to wait a while. I said, I understand. I said, but I've been calling this number for days, consistently, and I've gotten the same thing, and I haven't gotten anywhere with it. At that moment, a black female walks up, and she says, well, sometimes, there are certain days that are better to call, and sometimes that can be better. I said, yes, ma'am, I understand. I have called on those days, and I still haven't gotten any luck. She said, well, sit right here. I'll see what I can do for you. She goes to her cubicle, and then she waits for the white lady to sit back down at her desk, and she sneaks over to me, and she says, take this piece of paper and call this number. Now, on that piece of paper is the number that is on the Employment Commission's brochures and on their website. But underneath that is also another number. She tells me to call that other number. I go back to that landline phone, put it on speakerphone again, start my recorder, call the number. I get put into a call queue. I wait for maybe 3 minutes before I get a gentleman on the line. I ask him if all my paperwork is together. He said it is. Everything on the websites are correct. It just usually takes about a month. It's been about 3 weeks. I said, thank you very much. I go back, return that piece of paper to that black lady, and she winks at me. And I said, thank you very much for looking out for us. And she smiled, and she turned back around and started typing on her computer. I go back to the white woman. She said, will you help us? I was helped. I said, thank you very much. I said, by the way, you have a lovely accent. Where are you from? She actually has a very thick accent. She said, my parents were from France and Germany. She said, but I was actually born in Chile. Now, this is really interesting to me because I'm not sure if anybody knows too much about World War II history. But after World War II, there were a lot of Nazi sympathizers who actually left and fled Europe. A lot of them actually went to South America. And she's old enough to have been in that generation. And what a lot of people also don't know is that since France wasn't necessarily sure what was going on, a lot of them paired up and married with German soldiers and things of that nature. So I was wondering if there was a little bit of that operating there with that woman in the front. I'm not certain, but I suspect it. But I'm very grateful that there was another victim there. She stayed on code. She was able to help me. I was able to stay on code. I don't believe anyone suspected that she handed me this phone number, but this is a very complex It's a system, and it is designed to make sure that you do not get help. These automated services, and we're always having to take off work and spend this time just to speak to somebody on the phone is a waste of your time and energy, money. And that's just what I wanted to share with the listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly for sharing. Context of white supremacy. I think I've said for years that workplace racism, this is not, for spectators. This is not for people to just tune in and listen. Oh man, listen to some of the tribulations of the niggers for, a little while on a Thursday evening. That's not what this is about. That this is, about sharing, because I think it's important what the things that are happening to victims of white supremacy on the job. Whites are doing lots of the same things worldwide. And I think frequently we don't talk about how we're being abused in these workplace situations. So we don't realize, yep, they're doing a lot of the same things. And we, one, could learn a lot about racism. Two, could learn a lot about what it means to be white. And three, I think could learn some strategies to help us minimize some of these problems on the job while we continue to attempt to eliminate racism permanently. With what we just heard from our construction worker, that looking for a reason to get rid of a black person, they've been doing that forever in the system of white supremacy, using tardiness as justification. We've talked about that for years. I think critically, the inflating of the time to say that, he was over an hour late when it was only 20 minutes, with all of the technology that they got now to ping where your cell phone was and everything else. I'm sure they had live time tweets and a helicopter overhead for the accident and everything to be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, there was an accident. And, Nigger got here 20 minutes late, but we survived. Like, oh, no. We're going to extend it. He was 3 hours late and the factory almost melted down. We think he was drunk too. Just to add all of this in. And then, oh yeah, he was late. This is the 20th time this month that he's lived. That is standard operating procedure, where they will lie. And let's say if you did do one thing incorrect, it will turn into you did 20 things incorrect. There were 20 different violations of policy and procedure. This is the most recalcitrant employee that we've had. We've told him about this 50,000 times, and he keeps doing it and keeps doing it and keeps doing it. And we're just going to have to let it. That is consistent. That's why what I said with not being emotional, if you're not emotional, I mean, these situations, wow, they're talking about terminating you, or they did terminate you. It's a whole different thing to talk about being calm and to actually practice being patient in those circumstances. Well, wait a minute. Let me see the paperwork. If I've been late 3 times, let's see, so I know when those dates were. Oh, we don't even have the other dates. And then they don't send the information. Pattern there as well. Oh, I was an hour and 10 minutes late. Oh, well, let's get to that same thing. Let's get the information to see if that's true. And consistently, whites, they lie. That's the major weapon in the system of white supremacy. Great job with getting all of that data and even noting that they lied, saying, oh, yeah, we'll mail you your personal information so you can and then you never get the information. I would guess maybe you could ask for both next time. If they ask email or text, do both. Maybe you get one, not the other, just to have the records there. But try. I think we talked before about our personal records. And trying to get those. If you can get access, that's another one. Whites, maybe they give it to you. Maybe they don't. That might be a good one to ask for before there's any trouble or chaos on the work. It might even be one that you want to request maybe at least once a year just to see what's there. Once, maybe twice a year just to see what's been added, what's there, just to check out that information if you've been on a job for any length of time. With the situation at the unemployment office, again, great job being codified, being calm under very stressful circumstances. I'm thankful that there was another black person who was there, exercised some black self-respect to try to help you out. I think, at least I've heard from other folks, that, there are a lot of black people. That's why they attempt to have these type of jobs, so that they can help out a black person here or there as they can. But I mean, in the system of white supremacy, I would think that white woman, French, German, Chilean, whatever, race soldier, she probably had that other number. She could have probably done that. I think we've talked for years. That used to be one of Justice's hallmark questions about how do whites withhold constructive information. Just give out both. No, oh, this one isn't. Well, we got another number. You can try this one too. Maybe you'll have more success with that one. Whites do this all the time. Problems that could be and I mean like critical problems that could be easily solved, where they will just sit there and that's why when Mr. Fuller says the system of white supremacy is here because this is what whites want. They like it like this. They enjoy seeing black people suffer. I pick out illustrations like that. Something that simple. People at the unemployment office, they're in dire straits. I'm not saying our construction worker, but I mean, that's not something to play around with. You don't know if people, got their bills paid and what their situation is. That's stressful. You don't want to be messing around with that. Nope. Got the other number. Probably got it right here in front of me. Got my dark shades on. Nope. Pretend I'm Stevie Wonder and can't see anything, nigga. If we have other folks, if you either have comments on what we've heard from folks who called in or wrote in, or if you have your own situation, if you have a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Retired firefighter in Florida. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, sir, and greetings to the other callers and listeners. Yes, I would speak on the recent caller, the caller that just preceded me, and the first person who wrote in. When you go on a job under this global system of racist white supremacy, you are in a wartime environment because for the most part, and this is a byproduct of the system of racist white supremacy, the time that we spend the most around white people probably is in the workplace. So have a wartime like mode to do the best you can into not making it easy or easier for them to terminate you. They can do that even without any cause, actually. That's the power of racist white supremacy as far as I understand. But work on the things that you can have some control over. When it comes to the distance you are from your workplace, and I would understand, I don't know too much about it, but I would think that in construction, it changes, because after you participate in completing something, it's going to be somewhere else. Maybe the night before, or, as soon as you get the location, practice going there, or whatever. Check your transportation to make sure that it's functioning correctly. Now, all of these things, you may have already done. I don't know for sure. I don't know, but I'm just stating based on what I did when I was employed, because my workplace would change every now and then, and I would actually get up and get out the night before and drive to the location. Time it to see how much time it took me. Consider let's say if I get a flat tire, or something, else would take place. I think he mentioned about an accident that occurred, that sort of thing. And that would probably assist you into making it tougher for the racists to harm you in that way. And I just mentioned about tardiness, but it's a lot of other different things that they make it upon themselves to be an easy means to terminate a non-white person. Uniform-wise, just about most jobs have a uniform code, and if one violates it, it could even get to that point to where you can be terminated. General behavior, that sort of thing. All of those things play a part. In the subject of general behavior, I pattern myself as like a soldier in this global war of racist white supremacy, And I am not going to allow my enemy to make me change my behavior because their behavior, I expect their behavior to be incorrect. So in turn, as a soldier, you come from the beginning, as Gus mentioned, in being courteous, because that's what a good soldier does. No matter what the energy level is in that atmosphere, I'm going to be courteous. That sort of thing you have in your mind, so that takes care of the behavior situation. Like, mind you, like I said before, they can terminate us, find a way to terminate us anyway, but you'll make it more tougher, as far as that's concerned. The first situation that you reported, I was just thinking about the white female. When she goes home, the person that she picked, the non-white person that she picked, probably was a non-white person that is white identified. So she's not going to have any problem there because she has him under pretty well controlled. And actually, when she comes to work, it gives her the energy to mistreat non-white people and not worrying about when she comes home that her husband is going to be listening to the cows program. That ain't going to happen, as far as that's concerned. And in turn, for some reason, she wanted to have two non-white people come out of her vagina also. So that is a dangerous white person, is what I'm saying. Very dangerous white person. Once again, wartime mode. I would suggest you take an inventory of everything that you say and do on that job. Put a check behind the things that you think you're doing correct. Put a minus behind the things that you think you're doing incorrect, and be very tough on yourself in that light. And make adjustments. Same thing when you're not at work, because you're going to need it. You're going to need a situation to whereas you do the best you can to reduce the stress level. Soldiers go through that in war, as far as that's concerned. And definitely, what I've been hearing so far today is that we're talking about wartime type of mode, and you're going to have to, even when you're off duty, you're going to have to work on making an inventory of what you're doing that's correct, whether it's health-wise, whether it's the people that you're in contact with, maybe I need to step up my exercise routine or eating habits, that sort of thing like that. Make a full inventory of it, because it sounds like with the first call of the lady that it actually is employment to whereas she is probably doing well as far as the income and don't feel that is a good idea because you can't always have a solution to just to quit the job, that sort of thing. You're going to have some problems no matter where you go. So those are my suggestions on how you can kind of like make things, as best as possible. And that's all I'd say right now. Thank you.
Appreciate that, retired firefighter. Context of White Supremacy. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Great suggestions from retired firefighter. The only thing I would add with that first scenario, that was the one where the white woman, she's in a tragic arrangement, and she was blaming, or it seemed like she was especially terrorizing the black females on the job, and the victim who wrote in, she was being abused by this racist woman. When sometimes you don't, but if there's a white person on the job and there's some sort of tacky, tragic arrangement, I would definitely asterisk there. other non-white people on the job, you don't know if they know that information or not, but I would not at all try to have any sort of dialogue or conversation that, oh, this person is a racist. If those other victims, if they know, oh, this person is in some sort of tragic arrangement, for a lot of them, that's all they need to hear. Like, suspicion totally gone. I'm not interested in hearing any conversation about, Jane being racist. Like, dude, what? She's married to, a black guy. They got two, little gorgeous mulatto children and such out there. What do you mean? She's the most unracist person ever. That's the type of thing that they'll say. Just keep that in mind because that will probably just cause you a lot of problems trying to invest time and energy convincing other black people that, yes, even this white person is racist, and in fact, she's practicing racism against us right now. I would not invest 1 second of energy trying to convince any non-white person on the job of that. Other folks, if you dialed in with a hand up, if we've not heard from you at all, if you have commentary you'd like to share, proceed.
May I be heard?
Greetings, Red in Nevada.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. Hello, everyone. I was just thinking about the first situation with the person who wrote in. I'm still trying to ponder on maybe a response other than just maybe thinking of like a response to give her should something come out, because sometimes like with white women, they like to assume, or if they feel like you are going to possibly accuse them of practicing racism, then that's their opportune time to bring up the fact that they are sexually suing a non-white person, especially if it's a person of, your same quote-unquote race. So just maybe even thinking of responses to say back in, of course, a codified way, but I'm still not sure as far as what else can be done for that. And definitely I'm sorry to hear about the construction worker, but I actually have a situation at my job where I'm kind of actually running into things where it's not in the policies and procedures, because that's definitely something that I focus on when it comes to how to actually do the job correctly. And then also like HR type of situations, time and stuff like that. And a while back, my manager said that we're not supposed to clock in early, but if we clock in a minute late, then that can go into our file as far as being late in so many patterns. Then you can be terminated, or it can also cause you to get marks against you as far as being late. Like, once you get so many points or occurrences or whatever, then that's when they'll fire you for that. Not just it could be one of two things. So you might not have any like points against you as far as being tardy, but just because they can see that there's a pattern, then they could fire you for that. So definitely agree with the firefighter saying that they really can fire you for anything, especially with the right to work states. The manager recently told me that she was having to go back through people's records and taking off different tardy marks against them for like being 1 or 2 minutes late because of some computer issues, which company knows of the computer issues that they have, but they still, I guess, automatically racks up tardy points against you. The one thing I have been doing a lot better, and it is hard for me, but I have been doing a lot better with at least saying, good morning to these suspected racists. And sometimes I really just have to, do self-talk like a few minutes before I get to the work area, saying, okay, you have to remember, say hello to these people, even though you don't really, want to deal with these racists. So I have been doing that. I also, I was kind of overhearing a conversation between two racists about how the bonuses are calculated, and right before they were going to start sharing their true feelings about it, other than just kind of complaining about how they felt that they weren't getting enough, then that's when they stopped the conversation. They're like, oh, well, we'll talk, when we have our break time. So I was kind of it makes sense. Of course, they keep pertinent information to themselves. And this was actually between two white women and then a person who may be classified as white. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing was I don't want to necessarily say I got reprimanded, but I did get like a notice about something that I did during the job. And I asked specifically in a calm way, where is this in the policies and procedures? And they're like, oh, well, it's not really in there. We spoke to someone who was a little bit more tenured, and they said that this is just something that we do, and which did not make sense to me at all. And this was, I was asking someone who I assume would be considered white, a white manager, about this. And it was a woman, quote unquote, maybe. And she was like, I guess, trying to be reassuring as, white women, because I kind of feel like maybe she does operate as a white woman. How she was like, well, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect your pay. But I also had to acknowledge that I did get this information that I handled the situation wrong, even though there's no policies and procedures about it. All they did was go to someone else who was there for a little longer and said, oh, okay, well, this is what we do. So if it's something that if it's a procedure that we do, then it should then be in the policies and procedures and not just word of mouth, basically. But basically that didn't get anywhere because they felt that, since it's not really going to affect my pay, which they say, just not even worry about it. So I'm trying to figure out maybe like when I have like a meeting with my supervisors, try to bring it up again on like how to really address that. And one other thing that I noticed was that all of the assistant supervisors are white. And I don't know why I didn't notice it until one of them left, and then they started to interview to fill that person's slot. And I overheard some victims talking about how they applied for it, and there's some, and they didn't seem too hopeful about getting the position. So I'll definitely try to keep an ear out as far as who they decide to fill that white person's spot. And I'll mute my line. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Much obliged. I'm not surprised about that either. These phantom reprimands that whites hand out when they have policy and procedure. That's another way, in my view, of whites withholding constructive information. If it's some sort of policy and procedure, or this is our ritual for this particular corporate environment, it should be codified. It shouldn't be something where just, a handful of folks with this esoteric information hold this and don't write it down to share with anybody until it's going to be to their detriment. They let you know after the fact, oh, you messed up, you blew it. This isn't going to mess your raise, but you sure did blow it on that one. This is not how we do. Why not write that down and let me know ahead of time so that we could all be trained correctly about what the rituals are in this environment? Whites do that all the time. All the time. And I mean, that's something, if it's really minor, then that's something you could just come and tell everybody. Why not just come and tell everybody? Oh, we seem like a few folks didn't know this. It's not in policy and procedure. This is what it is. So if you run into this down the road, this is the way that we do it in this environment until you hear otherwise. Real simple. No, we like to make it even give the feel of a disciplinary issue that get to lash a nigger today for messing up on the job. They love that. So, and again, to have us off balance, thinking, oh man, am I going to be fired? Am I not going to get my raise? And they love to keep that sort of tension on black people in the workplace, really throughout the world in the system of white supremacy. Other folks that we missed completely, much obliged, Red, for sharing. If you have either your own situation that you want to discuss, or if you want to talk about some of the situations other folks are dealing with, feel free.
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
All right. I hope everyone is having a pretty okay day, and I'm sorry if you're not. I heard this. The person was speaking about the situation of trying to get their benefits. That is very, very unfortunate, especially when dealing with because I haven't been in that particular situation. Well, I've gotten benefits before, but I don't remember it being that bad. And I'm sorry to hear that it was bad as it was and that someone who should have helped you did not help you. I've been in my current job for about 3.5 years now, and I remember my manager coming to me and everyone at the same time in my department about people coming late. And he said it to all of us at the same time, and this is a white person, so I personally appreciated that. But ever since then, one thing I've done over the last couple of years is that I record what time I get to work, and I record what time everyone at my job gets to work. So if it ever comes a situation where someone tries to approach me individually about my own tardiness, which is not happening because I'm getting to work on time, I'll have a record of everyone's attendance around me, which is very interesting because one of the people in my department, of our 4-person department, she is the daughter of the county deputy administrator, and she's occasionally, almost every day, a couple minutes late. So if anyone ever comes to me about tardiness, I'll be bringing out my records. In any case, I have a story from yesterday, and I'll read it out loud. On Wednesday, July 11th, I participated in a gentrification field trip and panel. The field trip consisted of a bus ride through gentrifying black neighborhoods and was followed by a panel discussion of the importance of transportation and affordable housing. The field trip lasted a little over an hour, in which we were driven through multiple neighborhoods throughout the city, demonstrating the efforts to combat gentrification. This reminded me of white people giving tours of Harlem like the black people there constituted a zoo. We saw houses that were newly built and houses that were condemned but possibly had someone living in them, even if the houses are boarded up. We saw all this from the windows of the van we were riding in. As this ride was happening, we were reading a report that talks about the demographics like income levels, people making less than $35,000 and as low as $10,000 a year if they were lucky, when the median income for the county is $47,000. 1 in 2 people didn't have a high school diploma, high crime rates, and a couple of other demographic indicators. The panel discussion consisted of 3 panelists: the director of public transportation, the coordinator of a homeless nonprofit, and the director of a local ministry. Predetermined questions were proctored by the public transportation marketing specialist before questions were open to the floor. There were 14 people that were allowed to participate in the field trip that was the capacity of the van. I was one of 2 black people who was able to register for the van. The second was a local activist in the region, and she asked 2 questions. Were people from the county able to participate in a process for changing the current bus routes? And 2, are there any black people in decision-making positions? For the first question, the answer was yes, and the question was first answered by the director of public transportation, but the activist would not relent even though she had the answer she heard to her first question. So the activist continued badgering the public transportation director, even getting a bit of an emotional rise out of him. Then other people from the field trip, not even on the panel, felt the need to answer the activist's question. Yes, white people were forming Voltron before my very eyes. The second question is where the white-splaining began. The director of transportation said that his staff is 44% black. The public transportation department consists of bus drivers, mechanics, dispatchers, and the administrative staff, but the original question was how many black people are in a decision-making position. At this point, the director of the ministry decided to answer the question and said, yes, we have black people in decision-making positions, but none are present at the panel discussion right at that moment. Then the activist amended her question to the third panelist, asking why the white woman, the director of a homeless program, when the people who are homeless are black? Why is it when it's time to work, black people volunteer and white people get jobs? Fast forward to the end of the panel discussion. The activist and I are having a conversation, and the public transportation marketing specialist joins, letting the activists know that public meetings were held all over the community at different times, days, and locations to give black people an opportunity to chime in on the transit routes in the region. And then we are joined by one of the other participants on the field trip, who also happens to be the director of a nonprofit that helps people who are elderly and disabled. By the way, she is one of the white people that helped to form Voltron. For the most part, the conversation was a fruitless one. Nevertheless, the public transportation marketing specialist said that if black people want to participate more, One thing they could do was participate by becoming members on local boards in the government. I responded by saying that these board positions are also unpaid volunteer positions. Another thing, the public transportation and marketing specialist said that there are 5 administrative staff in the public transportation department and 1 is black. I responded by saying that is incorrect. The one staff member you are talking about told me himself that he does not identify as black. He identifies as Hispanic. Then she said, but he has a parent from outside the country, but she could not remember from where. I reiterated again that he himself said that he does not identify as black. Though, if a cop were to pull him over at 2 a.m. in the morning, I suspect he'd be classified as black. I wish I would have thought to ask, how do you know he's black when he himself said he identifies as a Hispanic? Also, the other woman who came in on the conversation chimed in. Keep in mind that the activist was asking about black people, for which the other woman responded to her something about people of color. Eventually, the conversation was distracted when the second woman said something about seeing a bumper sticker on a car that said, in a peaceful society, there's no need for police and prisons, to which the activist revealed it was her bumper sticker in her car. Then they started having a conversation about the state's reentry board for released prison slaves. To me, this whole process was an example of white paternalism, white-splaining, and white people having each other's backs. And that is the end of my story. I'll mute my line.
Well, asking questions can be constructive in any environment. A lot of times when they have those type of meetings, I think you were saying it was already restricted about the number of people that they could fit on the van or whatever the transportation was to this event. Sometimes they restricted by even who they allow to ask questions at those events. A lot of times they don't just allow anyone to get up and grab the microphone and say what they want or ask a question or what have you. A lot of times that is just racial pyrotechnics. They want to get a good PR event to show, oh, this is great, urban renewal, and they'll even have a few black people do some racial showcasing to make it seem like the niggers will be staying and doing well. They'll show a black person who's had a house there for 2 or 3 years or whatever the case is. But I'm glad folks are able to go and ask questions. That is grand. If other folks have comments on what has been shared, what they've heard thus far, feel free. Oh, and words are very important. That was a huge one that I was going to add, particularly for what we just said, what was just shared. Words are so important. Using correct words. I think we've had that crop up in a lot of different ways. Words and even racial classifications, very important. Extremely important to not even just be tossing around racial classifications when we're talking about other individuals, because that was crucial to have someone suspected racist identify someone as black, and then to know that I've talked to this person and they do not identify as black. That would have been a great question to ask. How did they conclude that this is a black person when this individual themselves or this individual does not identify as black themselves? That would have been a great question, but even without that question, great counter-racism science and just recognizing that and the importance of words and the importance of racial classification. Those are words too, but very, very important. Be mindful of that. Really be paying attention and alert when folks are talking, especially on the job. Other people that have dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have comments on what's been shared thus far, or if you have your own situation, proceed.
I guess.
Stacy in the UK, see if we can get our timestamp 2:24 a.m. Friday morning.
Hello to you, Gus, and to the rest of the callers. And apologies for last week. You gave me such a extensive introduction, and then I wasn't on the line, which I actually, excuse me, put down to a combination of the effects of racism, white supremacy, in the reason why I'm able to join so regularly to this call program, even though the time difference is so huge, is because actually I suffer from insomnia due to the impact of the racist terrorism. But also, it was actually quite hot last week. It's still quite warm, but it was extremely hot last week. So my sleep patterns were even more disrupted because of that. But I do appreciate being able to join this program because it has helped me deal with a lot of what I'm going through. And there's been much discussion on this program about whether or not to discuss racism in the workplace, and I used to do so. I have reached the conclusion that it is not wise to do so, and that is my new code. So hopefully sharing my experiences on this program is one of my contributions to countering the system of racism. In terms of, before I go into my update, I'm sorry to hear about the construction worker being terminated. I can only imagine it's incredibly stressful. And it sounds like he's getting some support from his union, which is a good thing, although I have very poor opinions of unions. But it does sound like over the period, his union has been supportive, if, not entirely effective. But I do wish him well. And in terms of some of the earlier callers, I think it was the person who worked in the university who was being told about her demeanour being calm, and that's one thing she's got going for her. And I liken that to the comments made to the person who works in the Florida courthouse being told that he smiles, but they never see any other emotion out of him. It's just obviously suspected racists actually watching and observing, because they clearly are not getting the desired effect or the expected stereotypical emotional response that they are hoping for, as a way of then enacting their, I would guess, standard racist practice to terminate on the basis of an emotional outburst. So in that regard, she and the the Florida courthouse person are doing extremely well and remaining on code. So congratulations to them. And I think it was Red in Nevada who was talking about having to practice her code in being more, I guess, cordial, for want of a better description, with the racists that she works with, and just practicing that. I completely concur and understand how difficult that can be, having been on the receiving end of the racist terrorism. They terrorize you, and then they want you to smile with them and hang out. And there's nothing worse than that. But at the same time, I think this program is a good example of how that can be done, and the way that you interact with some of the suspected racists you interviewed, Gus, and how your demeanour is always consistent. And I think that does stand as a regular example of how it can be done. I went back to work this week. Probably over 10 months now, having been withheld from the workplace. I was working 2 days a week, 2 days this week, 1 day in the office and 1 day from home. And next week it will be 3 days. This is an arrangement with the suspected racist organisation that I work for. So 3 days next week, and it'd be 2 days in the office and 1 day from home. But I obviously get paid for full time for both weeks. This is part of the transition and me back into the organisation. So much has gone on over the period. I wouldn't even know where to start in terms of just talking about it. And to be honest, it's still ongoing. But I do understand last week where I think it was a caller who called in about his father who had been in an accident or been ill, and had determined that whatever he did in the future would not involve working in a corporate office environment because it's so toxic. And I do, as we've always talked about, it is so difficult to be in those environments. And I went back in this week, and my very first meeting was with the violent, aggressive director. And I did raise concern about this matter with HR, given that we are due to have what is called mediation. The mediation wasn't arranged as yet, which is one thing I challenged, because what they had actually told me was that they would organise mediation. Just to go back a bit, I actually had a meeting on the 31st of May with HR, where I was told, we're going to bring you in probably on the 4th of June, which is like 2 or 3 days away, working days away, minus the weekends. But I think it was a way of, according to my union rep, them just trying to play hardball. So I said, but obviously I wasn't going to say, no, I'm not going into work. But what they said was, we'll put in some mediation with you and your new line manager. And the new line manager was not named in the grievance. So it was particularly confusing to me as to why they were putting in mediation with me and somebody who I didn't put in any kind of grievance or raise. I mean, I did raise concerns about her behaviour because she was part of the team, but it wasn't a formal grievance. But they weren't going to do anything with the people who were named in the grievance, including the suspected, she's not suspected, racist, aggressive director. So I asked them, well, what's your plan? And she said, well, the mediation, we'll arrange it subject to the availability of the mediator, but probably about 2 weeks into you coming in. Now, because of the fact that the grievance wasn't upheld, they're using that as a way of saying, well, we don't want to talk about anything in the past anymore. It wasn't upheld. So I said, well, and this is all my learning from the cows. And the grievance process was a farcical, nonsense, fraudulent, corrupt process. But I said, well, the grievance wasn't found in my favour, i.e. that they said there was no evidence of the issues that I'd raised. But what it also did not say was that the matters that I raised did not happen. Which then meant she had to leave that room and say she would be coming back to me as soon as possible, because it is the organisation's right to bring me back in. So I said, well, I don't exactly know why you're raising that matter with me, even though I didn't have any choice in the organisation keeping me out of the management keeping me out of the organisation for the best part of 10 months. Why are you telling me that? And obviously there was no response to that. So she said she would be coming back as soon as possible. I didn't hear from her for another 22 days, so it was on the 22nd of June that I finally got a response. And obviously I was emailing in between what's happening. So then I get another nonsense response basically saying that they are now considering putting in mediation with the people concerned and not the new line manager. And what is it? Subject to the availability of the mediator, it will be within 2 weeks. So I did raise the matter over our head because that's a piece of nonsense, because essentially, that means it may never happen, basically. So you're not going to play games with me. And also, what is the content of this mediation? Because I fail to understand how mediation is going to deal with people's violent behaviour. I can see how they might propose mediation for some of the other issues, but not violent behaviour. Nobody can explain that one to me as yet. So anyway, I had the meeting with Race's director Tuesday. And it was an interesting meeting. I won't go through all the details today because I've been speaking quite a bit. But one of the interesting things coming out of that conversation was she now wants to, or she offered, not, which I guess wasn't really an offer, to meet with me on a regular basis. Now, bearing in mind, I've never had meetings with her before. If I have, they've involved other managers and they've been, specific to projects that I'm working on. I have a line manager. I have a head of team. Why do I need to have regular meetings with this director? What are the basis for these meetings? Which I did ask. She says, oh, well, it's, just so that she can keep an eye on things so that, there are no issues. And so I agree to it, but I know that if I'm not comfortable with it, I will go back and say something because I do actually think it's highly inappropriate. Now, my assessment of that is that over this period, I have completely changed my approach in that I am not having conversations about, I haven't been in the office, but where people have been reaching out to me, I'm not having conversations with any non-white person about matters to do with the reasons why I've not been in the office and grievance and any other detail. And I intend to operate that way going forward. And I think she completely underestimated the response that she would have got from me because they have been torturing me for 3 years. And I guess even racists get complacent. I suspect she thinks this negress needs closer inspection and she doesn't want to rely on her usual methods. So she wants first-hand observation of me, and her way of doing that is to pull me into meetings with her for regular catch-ups. So we shall see. But, I went into the office and what I did do is do my preparation beforehand, so very similar to some of the suggestions earlier today. I watched the first half of The Spook Who Sat by the Door because he was very codified in the way he engaged with the suspected racists in that office. I was thinking all about the cows all the way through that first day. Not my office, not my desk, not my projects, not anything. And where even the people who are involved in the terrorizing me for the last 3 years came up to me and spoke to me because they are very refined. And, it's about mirroring their behavior because they can smile and terrorize you at the same time. So I acted in a similar codified way. I'm not going to be excessively smiley, but I'm going to be courteous. But I'll move my line there, guys, because I've been speaking for a while. Oh, sorry, one question. I'm interested if anybody has been involved in any mediation process and whether people have got any feedback on how those processes or their experience of mediation, basically. I'll move my line, guys.
Much obliged, Stacey in the UK. Do we have callers? If you have any experience with the mediation process on the job, if you have any suggestions or experience that you can share on that particular subject matter, give us a jingle, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press *61 if you would like to participate. We have any folks, if you have mediation experience you would like to share. I also think something really important that Stacey shared there in terms of sharing with other non-white people. I think she started off her commentary saying that she kind of updated her code. I was going to talk about that. She updated her code to no longer talking about racism, white supremacy on the job. And at the conclusion of her commentary, she said with her experience now that she's back on the job or transitioning back to being in the office space, that she is not going to discuss her mediation process and what all she has gone through with it. She's not going to talk about this with other non-white people on the job. And to me, that is counter-racist logic for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about for years. I think Stacey herself has talked to us about times where she concluded that whites on the job, they were using other victims of white supremacy to try to extract information from her, or to, at minimum, they were going to be the folks to go out and do the spying and reporting back to racist woman and racist man about what Stacey was doing or what's going on in the workplace. Just having that in mind, no way. In my view, you are never discussing any sort of mediation process or anything. If you are having any sort of conflict and looking for a resolution in the workplace, that's between you and whoever is solving the problem. I would not be talking about that at all. I think that's one that's come up before as well from listeners on the program. Great job just asking questions, and even with the quote unquote grievance. That's another term that I would recommend not using. Picking on, grievances, any of that. We're not talking about something from primary school. We're talking about terrorism and torture. But the quote-unquote grievance situation to say, well, hey, it wasn't founded, but they did not conclude that I was fabricating these allegations either. And what's the response going to be? And then it takes a month for them to come back and come up with a decision on that. So just outstanding job being calm, asking questions, and using counter-racist logic. I cannot say that enough. Use logic. And it's been my experience, the calmer that I can stay, where you're not upset, where you can just think, what did they say? What are the words that they use? What has been presented to you? If they have made a charge, what's the allegation? What are the terms that they're using? And you can just evaluate that. Make sure we're using correct terms. Do we need a definition? Is there an allegation? Do you have evidence? Just fundamentals about things that you can ask and inquire when you know racism is afoot. But mediation, any folks who dialed in, do you have experience with mediation you would like to share?
Can you hear me, Gus?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, it's a caller from Virginia. Thank you for reading my email earlier. I do not have experience with mediation, but you had asked if I could kind of talk a little bit about the policy and procedures and how I've been utilizing that. And it's interesting because the policy and procedure came to me because they were trying to, this was probably maybe about 8 months ago, someone was trying to make a point that I wasn't doing something correctly. So rather than having a conversation with me about it, they just kept throwing this policy document at me and saying, we've reviewed this with you, so make sure that you know what it is you're supposed to do. So in this situation, what did I do? Pulled up that same document and then used it to my advantage in this. Well, I wouldn't say it's to my advantage because, we're not at the advantage, but I used it in this particular circumstance. And there are a few things that have been happening that I think are a theme. They certainly try to, we talk about confusion a lot, but this is a tactic. So my boss on Monday, she tried to confuse things by, asking me to write the email and then telling me that it wasn't ready, calling me and asking me to come over to her office, and just, a lot of things that were abrupt and, not planned out. So I had to really kind of take a step back and say, okay, I can have a meeting with you, but let's do it tomorrow, which gave me some more time to prepare and to, pull up some information and pull up some emails and whatnot. So I think just taking time sometimes, to kind of focus, because it can be extremely stressful. And I was very upset about all of this that was happening. But I think that she was surprised when I came into the meeting on Tuesday with the policy and procedure, because I hadn't notified her that I was going to deal with that particular document. I had given her some indication of the things that I wanted to discuss, but I didn't give her everything. So when I walked into the meeting and I handed her the pieces of paper, she was like, "Oh, okay, well, hold on. Let me just read this for a minute." And then I think that she kind of also was taken aback in a way because she wasn't expecting that. So, it's very interesting. We have to, be so careful with them because they are ready to change the rules at any time. So even though we were talking about the policy and procedure, she then said, well, we can't always deal with policy and procedure. Sometimes we have to look at, other things, and it's not always going to be about that. So, they just change things so that you can be confused and be off guard and not know what it is that your next move is going to be. So I think the calm demeanor is very helpful. Even if after the meeting or after the situation, you have to go out and, talk to your friends or talk to your close family or whomever and have your emotions dealt with in that manner or in that area and not deal with it in front of the boss. But I did want to, there was a male caller who said something about bringing out records of other people who are sometimes tardy. And I'm curious how that would go for you because I think sometimes, and my manager, my boss, she said this to me when I was, kind of saying, well, wait a second, what are the rules? Aren't the rules the same for everybody, or are there different rules for different people? She said to me, her response was, well, you should really just pay attention to yourself. So I think that you want to be careful, that caller who said that he was going to be tracking what other people are doing. Just be careful because at some point, if you do decide to bring up what other people are doing, they could always look at you and say, well, you don't need to be worried about what other people are doing. We're dealing with what you're doing. So just something to be aware of. And that's about it. I'll mute my line.
Wow. Much obliged for the details with policy and procedure. That when you asked about policy and procedure about this white woman thieving the client for the gift, the smaller gift, and the response, it seems she was caught off guard by having to review the policy and procedure, and then for her to say, well, sometimes we have to veer from policy and procedure. It can't exactly be by the book. I would want to know, are there other circumstances that you can let me know when we need to deviate from policy and procedure? Because generally what happens when we deviate from policy and procedure means it's going to be discretion, racist discretion about what happens. That is never going to benefit a non-white person. But yeah, anytime a white person in a workplace situation, at least in my view, if they're saying something that sounds like this is a situation where we're not exactly going to go by policy and procedure, why not? And are there any other circumstances that you can let me know right now where we deviate from policy and procedure so I'll know that in the future? That's one. The other one, when they, in any situation in a work environment where they start talking about, oh, just focus on yourself. Don't, compare yourself. I would write that down. That is huge because whites know that is nonsense in the workplace. Anytime you start talking about productivity and people are late, you are looking at what other employees are doing. Now, if everybody is showing up at work, if we start at 9 and everybody shows up at 9:02, well, then how am I going to single out Roger and say that you're late and ignore that everybody comes in at 9:02? That is not, I would write, you don't have to say that, and I certainly wouldn't encourage, but I would write that down. That sounds like someone who wants to practice racism, white supremacy, and mistreat you because they know that is nonsense. Whites compare other employees to one another all the time. How would you get productivity rates for employees if you're not making a comparison about how much work this person gets done between 9 to 5, how much work this person gets done between 9 and 5, unless I am in error. The caller in Virginia, really quick, is the competition still going on between you and the coworkers over these gifts?
Well, we ended it June 30th. That was the end of our fiscal year. I came in number 2 out of about maybe 15 or 16 people. So there was only one person who raised more money than me. And I think it's certainly an issue for them because I've noticed in my career that when you start performing at a level that is beyond what they expect, they do try to find things to irritate you. So you would think, okay, she's number 2. Let's congratulate her. Let's give her some space. Let's not, focus on little things that are insignificant. Let's not, No. I was number 2, but I'm still being harassed. So, yeah.
Number 2 Negro system of white supremacy. Pretty consistent. Congratulate. And I mean, that's with the thieving white woman. She stole the 300. I mean, hey, you could have been number 1 if we didn't have all the thieving and stealing that's been going on throughout this entire competition. I would expect more of that, just from what it sounds like. If they're that irate that you came in second in this competition with all of the torturing and terrorism and mischief that you had to endure. I don't know if there's another round, or you all just restart the competition all over again. But I would expect even more.
It's annual.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would expect even more. I am sure there are probably a good 13 other whites in your office. I don't know if you're the only black person, but my guess,
I am.
Okay. Yeah. If it's 13 other white people on that list, they're furious, and probably whoever is number 1, they're furious too. That the Negro was that close to me after we stole all of her gifts and everything. Do you know where the white chick, the race soldier who stole the 300,000, where did she finish?
Interestingly enough, we never see any of her numbers reported. She's exempt from public displays of numbers, so I don't know what she's doing.
Wow. Don't want her compared to other employees. How about that? Racist woman. Context of white supremacy. Other mediation. Make sure I do not forget that. Much obliged to our caller in Virginia, both for the write-in and the follow-up call-in. If we have anybody who has mediation experience, Stacy would be super appreciative. Mediation experience. See a few other folks dialed in with hands up. Mediation experience, see if we have any folks with that. I'll prompt again as we proceed. Still looking for mediation experience. If there are other folks who dialed in with a hand up that we've not heard from, if you have commentary you would like to share, proceed.
May I be heard?
Greetings, Ivy.
Greetings, Gus, and greetings to all the callers on the line. I just wanted to quickly ask the issue with regard to what some people are allowed to do and some people are not. Gus, didn't Neely Fuller Jr. point out that is actually a matter of equal treatment under the law?
Yes, ma'am. That's how I've heard him reference that with the 14th Amendment, that's how you make sure that justice, that we are striving towards justice, that everybody, the laws are being applied equally to everyone. Absolutely.
Okay, because I was just going to quickly say that, I mean, I thought that your advice was actually brilliant, not to necessarily speak on it right then, but to document it for the future. If they try to terminate you on, these types of grounds or things of that nature, maybe you can use that in a lawsuit as far as equal treatment under the law. I don't know, in terms of bringing that up right when it happens, if saying that in particular about equal treatment under the law, if that will, cause, new problems. But I guess that could possibly be an option. But if not, again, you can, possibly use it in litigation. So it makes me think of what you said about how they know, that's nonsense. And they will, if they think that you are ignorant, and they probably assume that you are because they control all the information anyway, they will lie, which is what that person did. That race soldier did. She lied when she said, you don't need to be worried about what other people are doing, because she was saying that's irrelevant, and it's not. And that's all I had, and I'll mute my line. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gus.
Indeed. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if we've not heard from you at all, certainly if we have any folks with mediation experience, chime in. But if we have not heard from you at all, go ahead and speak up now.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, greetings, Gus, and greetings to the callers. I'm retired from the New York courts. So they're supposed to be promoting justice, but they're promoting, quote, fairness, unquote. So one thing I want to say is I grew up very white identified. I went to school with white people from the 2nd to the 8th grade. They actually kind of did like a trick baby situation where white people came to my school in Harlem and saw my test scores and convinced my mother to send me to a white school in Lower Manhattan. Grew up white, very white identified. Ended up taking a test for a court officer and going into the courts. When I was in the academy, the president of the union, who was Irish, came into the academy and spoke to us about the union. But one of the things he said was how he asked the question, how many people found out about this job in a bar? And a lot of the white guys, Irish guys, raised their hands. And then, hindsight is 2020. I realized that he was not really talking to the non-white people in the room at all. He was telling the white people, especially the Irish people, that we run these courts. And so, that's why you heard about it. And he started mentioning other jobs, like the post office in New York, how a lot of white Irish go into those jobs. So, after graduating from the academy, I went to the Bronx courts, and the captain told me I had this white female terrorist who I was working with when I was in training. They have on-the-job training after you graduate from the academy. And she was supposed to be showing me how to run the courtroom. And every day from about 12 o'clock till about 3 o'clock, she would disappear. Now, lunch is from 1 to 2, but she would disappear from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And her locker room was right next door to the courtroom we were working in. And, I found out eventually that she was going into the locker room and watching the soap operas on television, as opposed to being in the courtroom with me. So I complained about it, and the captain told me that he was going to get me fired. So, I gave a very codified response, while everybody else didn't have to be where they're supposed to be till 9:30, and they can go and have 2-hour lunches and things like that. I was showing up in my uniform 9 o'clock, going lunch at 1 o'clock, showing up 2 o'clock, leaving at 5 o'clock, as opposed to being able to sign out, whenever you were done for the day. So a lot of white people walking out the door 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and going for the day. Anyway, so I realized that it was like this movie called The Guard. Don Cheadle was talking, and the Irish dude said, racism is part of my culture. The book 5 Points, they talk about how, these people, after they won their war amongst each other for control of New York, they decided who was going to be the commissioner, this, that, and other thing. And, still like that in 2018, they have a judicial commission on minorities, and they write reports. And they talk about how to, increase ethnic diversity in the courts. But, again, no one's in the court system. They had a report in 1988. And in that report, they talked about how they had the word nigger on the wall, how they used to, perp, all type of, and this is in the areas where the public couldn't go. This is only in areas where only court personnel could go. And so it had to be court personnel writing this type of graffiti. And, Baba Baruti talks about the graffiti that white people write and, how degrading and terroristic it could be. So, I read this book called The Psychopathic Racial Personality, and that kind of stuck in my mind. So, of course, I'm attempting to help non-white people navigate through the courts. But you mentioned the 14th Amendment. And, we talk about how words are important in the system of racism and white supremacy. But those words in that document are not English. They are legalese. You have to go into a dictionary in order to define those words. They have a separate dictionary for that. The name of that dictionary is called Black's Law Dictionary, right? So, they have white persons defined. That's why when you see those words that are on the census, they're there for a reason, because that's how things are legally defined. So, they use words in order to confuse people. So I eventually retired because, I was interested in, we had a case in the Bronx where a boy was playing football and the ball hit the cop's car and the cop killed the boy. So the cop was on trial for murder. After the trial was over and the cop was acquitted, now, of course, all the court officers knew he was going to be acquitted in advance because we had to prepare security for the backlash, right? So we knew what the judge's decision was going to be before the judge announced it to the public. Okay, so we had all these security stations, and when the cops were walking out of the courtroom, one of the cops said, "That's the way we get rid of spics in the Bronx." And somebody punched him in the face, riots starts, I was injured. Normally when officers get injured with that injury, they get 3 quarters, they get to go out. But, obviously things don't work the same for non-white people. They will, obviously withhold information. I give you the best assistance. Anyway, so eventually, after 20 years in the court system, I leave, but nothing has changed. Again, the way they do things, even with mediation, there was a white officer, he called a black officer a house nigger. He said that he was repeating something that he heard another non-white inmate say to the officer. The officer, the black officer said that, he thought that was incorrect. And I was a part of a thing called the Tribune Society. In the course, the Tribune Society is the society for black people in order to try to get parity in the court system. The Tribunes are the underclass of the Romans. And of course, they run everything in their fascistic way, like fascism. And you see the fascism symbol everywhere. If you go, all around the courts, even if you go look at the Congress, they have the fascist symbol in the Congress. They have the fascist symbol in the Emancipation statue in Washington with Lincoln. So fascism is a part of this culture. It used to be on the back of a dime as well. So when they're running their thing, they are, like I said, I was white identified. So after work, we used to go to the bar and white people used to drink. But, again, when I was in the academy, they said that's we used to share information, useful information to other white people about jobs and promotion. And while we were in the bar together, they never shared that type of information. What I thought, quote unquote, was my white friend, one day, this woman complained about me because she said that she didn't like the way I spoke to her. But I asked her, "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" She said, "You can't talk to me like that." Now, this white male who was supposed to be my supervisor was over my shoulder. So he saw the whole exchange. He heard me be polite, asked the woman what she needed, and, her responding, "You can't talk to me. I'm going to speak to your supervisor." And I looked at him, and he said, "Yes, ma'am, can I help you?" And he went and talked to his supervisor. So eventually they called me into the office, and he said to me, "You have to remember, you are a big black fellow. So you have to watch how you speak to people because you intimidate people." And I said, I said, "Really?" And the white female was in the room. I looked at her, and that's what we discussed. And of course, went to the grieving process. But because if you're going to stay in any job situation, what you don't want to do is you don't want to alienate yourself. You don't want to put yourself on an island because, again, they will terrorize you. When I first got there, they put me on probation. I was on probation for a year anyway, and my captain said he was going to fire me. So I did, super be on point. So that's what they do to you. They, as opposed to addressing your concerns, your issues, what they would rather do is find a way to remove the people who complain about the issues. If you go along and get along, everything, just like the system of racism and white supremacy. If you talk about, this, I think you're practicing racism against me, it's a problem. But the whole society, tribute society, is really for who are looking to be racially showcased. They're looking for people to be put in jobs where, it's like the Obama thing. You know, in the Bronx, you had a chief clerk. When there's a white male, he had the power to do everything. When the black male got the job, he was powerless. He couldn't do anything. He had to get permission. He had to ask this, that, nothing. And of course, the whole now the job is even bifurcated. It's not even just one job. It's two jobs now. So when the white male is doing it, he could be the chief clerk of everything. When the black male does it, oh no, you're gonna change things up. But as far as mediation is concerned,
30 seconds.
Yeah, and all the different issues, what happens is they are not attempting to provide justice. What they're trying to do is to see what's going to make you shut up and go away. Whether that is having to give you, a little bit of compensation. But they're going to do what they do, in other ways. They're just not going to, address your concerns. And I'm going to mute my line. Thank you.
Much obliged for your commentary, sir. That right there has been another major theme, different ways that white people conceal information. Now, the job one, in terms of what he was talking about when he began his commentary, in terms of them sharing apparently these job opportunities while they were out drinking whites and alcohol. But that is, whites and alcohol, that is very old, long-running tradition in the system of white supremacy, but definitely concealing those jobs amongst themselves about who's going to get hired or if it's promotion or whatever. That is long-running in the system of white supremacy in so many different ways in terms of them restricting access to information, especially, as I said, jobs, promotions, that sort of thing. No surprise there. And I think that's at least the second or third time that we've heard that just within the conversation this evening, within the last 30 minutes. We had the caller who was talking about the whites being downstairs and they were talking about different prospects on the job. And then, oh, wait a minute, might be some niggers present. We'll pick up and continue this conversation later, which again goes to the notion that white people are not ignorant about racism when they're out performing and doing all of these things. You cannot be ignorant about white supremacy and perform in this sort of manner all over the world. It does not make sense. Checking it. Well, actually, I will pause. If there are folks with mediation experience who would like to comment, we certainly want to hear from you, but we did have other people who dialed in or wrote in with commentary. I want to make sure if I can get everybody who wrote in before we wrap today. So other caller, I think this is Black Male, wrote in. He says, yeah, I think this is a Black Male. Can anyone tell me what coconut means? In my workplace, many non-blacks refer to Caribbean black people as coconuts. I have a feeling that the definition probably matches that of the N-word, but I'm curious. There's this lady at my workplace who refuses to stop watching me. She's the file lady, so there's no reason for her to be near me, and she's not even good at hiding it. Every time she goes back to her desk, the manager calls or comes over to me to either scold me or triple my workload with the intention of me not being able to complete it. Speaking of my manager, she hates black females. Every black female who worked under her has quit. I feel like I heard this before. They don't last longer than 2 months. Now that there are no black females directly under her, she has targeted me. I asked everyone around me if this manager monitored their interactions with clients. They said yes. I then asked if she interrupted every conversation that they had. They said no. My manager has been monitoring me, her words, and interrupting my interactions with clients to reprimand me about taking too long or using words he doesn't like. My black coworker has also been having issues with another white coworker who too keeps watching her, stalking her really. Yesterday, this white coworker came up to my black coworker and asked why she hasn't been parking in her usual spot. It's impossible to park in the same spot every day. A few days ago, the same white woman goes to my black coworker and says, "Your dress is up. You have been oh, wait a minute. You're dressed up." There we go. You're dressed up. You've been dressed up for the past 3 days. My coworker told me this, and we were both speechless. You should both be listening to the cows. This has been a theme for the summer. I keep saying it. I guess I'll just continue to say it. You are under surveillance. Now, I repeated this, I think it was maybe 3 weeks. It was, maybe 3 weeks ago. I said this or reminded listeners of this. It wasn't the first time that we talked about this subject because of me being in yoga class and a white man that I'd never seen in my life came up to me before and said, "Oh, I've heard all about you and the classes that you've taken," just from me telling him my name. I don't know if he'd seen me or not, but I know I'd never seen him. The same thing happened again this week. I had a white person. I was in class, and he came up and he said, "Oh, I'm in teacher training." I am too. And he says, "I've seen you in class. You're so impressive." And I'm like, wow, I have never, why, and particularly another male, like really, to just watch them in class and, see what their form looks like or what have you. I'm not into that at all. If you are a black person, you are being watched. There are few things in the universe whites pay more attention to than their niggers. And I've said this consistently. I think we greatly minimize that in the workplace to our detriment. None of these things should be a surprise that you have whites who are paying attention to every detail, exactly what you're wearing, exactly how you lace your shoelaces, exactly where you park every day. That's the system. And I just said white people are not ignorant about racism, white supremacy. They are certainly not ignorant about their niggers. That's what understanding racism means. I think we have been greatly confused about that, and it might throw us off. Really let that sink in. What it means to be white, there is nothing I pay more attention to than niggers. Every single one of them. I'm monitoring, keeping an eye. This is our enterprise. This is what we do worldwide. And I guess I would just keep emphasizing it. And folks, anybody who is under surveillance, you should just keep writing in, because apparently there are a lot of C.O.W.S listeners who still end up being surprised that, wow, they are watching everything I do. Wow, they are rifling through my trash can. They are rifling through my desk. They're paying attention to where I... Yes, that's the system of white supremacy. Now, with regards to coconut, I think, I can't give you a clean definition on that one, but I've heard that one enough. I think that's just like spear chucker, nigger. I mean, I think it might be one that's specific to non-white people who might have been born in what they call the Caribbean. I think it's just been a while. I don't hear that one as frequently, but I've seen it before. I've looked at it before. I'm very sure that is right up there. Nigger, spear chucker, all the rest of them that they use, gook or whatever else, what they call racial epithets for non-white people. That's what coconut is. I just think it's specific for folks that are from the islands, as they would say. Were there any questions? A lot of this was with stalkers and black females being targeted. I think we heard a lot of that as well. And again, just not being surprised if you're black, period, you're going to be terrorized. And with this, she didn't go into a lot of details in terms of the nature of the targeting, but if you know that that's what this person's MO is, as we've heard before, that they do things to falsely accuse black people and the black females specifically. If you know this is you, then you already have your counter-racist code there. I'm going to be competent in what I do. I'm going to keep records. If it's accusations of work not being done, I know I need to have records about turning in assignments, if that means backing up files and that sort of thing. I don't know what the nature of the accusations are because they weren't presented here, but we already talked about making sure you have an aggressive code to deal with that if you know this is someone who aims to either have me fired or to pluck my nerves so that I quit. The number again...
Yeah.
Stacy in the UK still hanging with us, 3:14 a.m. Friday morning.
Apologies, sorry, I thought you'd finished. I was just going to say the coconut is the equivalent of, I guess, Oreo. So black on the outside, white on the inside. That's how it tends to be used over here in the UK. And I would imagine, as my parents come from the Caribbean, that the reference is being used in exactly the same way. So I think it's the equivalent of the US use of Oreo, if that's helpful.
I think Stacy is correct. I told you it'd been a while since I remembered exactly what that one is. I think that's the way that I've heard it used as well. Coconut being used the same way as Oreo. Yes, the Oreo experience, folks remember? 9 years of the cows. Other folks dialed in. If we have mediation experience, that would be wonderful. Certainly, if we have anybody that has a hand up that we've not heard from at all, You should go ahead and speak now.
Can I be heard?
Codified software developer, Wisconsin. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Gus. Good evening to all the callers and listeners. I do not, unfortunately, have mediation experience. However, I had a couple of things that happened this past week at work. So I was downstairs at my job last Friday speaking to the lead architect and his minion about some work. And they started talking about the merger situation that we're having at work. And they keep on throwing around this number of 3 years. I think that's a very important number. I haven't decided exactly what that means, if that means that they've made a plan in 3 years to get rid of a lot of people, if they think 3 years is going to be the period of time that it's going to take them to transition all of this other company's business onto the company I work for, onto their platform. I don't know, but I think 3 years is a very important number because they keep on throwing it out. But I was just paying attention to what they were saying, and the lead architect looks at me all of a sudden. He says, well, I'm going to work for a codified software developer. And I said, I didn't have a response to that. But I thought that was really interesting. And later on, I had a meeting with him, and it was a meeting about a project that's for this merger. I've had some information on the machine I use at work, and I was going to email it to him. We were in a meeting room, and it was just he and I. We were in a meeting room, and I had a cup and my notebook, my work notebook, not my personal work diary, but just all the notebook with all the information that I keep for their specific work. And I ran upstairs to my desk to email it to him very quickly, and I thought about it. I was like, oh, that cup is downstairs, and it's got something in it. And so I sat there in the meeting, and I didn't drink from the cup at all. And I know he noticed that because he kept on looking at the cup and kept on looking at me. And so I asked him while we were in this meeting, I said, well, do you expect that I will be the only developer on this project? And he sort of gives me buckets and buckets of words, and then he says, well, I don't want to pile any work on you. And I said, And then he repeats that, and I thought that was really interesting because I think that's exactly what he's trying to do. So I'm really waiting to see how that's going to work out. This, again, is causing some issues with the non-white Indian male. And at this point, I'm very convinced that they're saying things to him that are getting him riled up, so to speak, because his behavior shifts. He does like a 180. He's normally a very pleasant person. He's actually didn't grow up in India. He's actually born and raised here. And so I've noticed with Indians who are born and raised here that they tend to, well, they've obviously experienced racism in a different way in this part of the world, and they tend to be a little bit more they tend to be a little friendlier than Indians from that so-called country. But he deviates from being very pleasant to being very hostile, and I believe that they're sort of talking to him and giving him some sort of information. Just in terms of asking questions, I think that's very important. It reminds me of the situation I had with one of the testers at my job, an older white female, and she doctored an email that she sent me. She doctored an email and put it on this sort of website that we have where we keep our tasks. And I just happened to be looking at the task because I was interested in seeing what she was doing. And I noticed this doctored email. And instead of accusing her, because I knew that, as you say, Gus, the Voltron effect, right? She reminds somebody of their racist grandma. So I knew accusing her would not be very helpful. So instead, I took a screenshot of the doctored email and asked her, well, when did you send this to me? I didn't receive it. This caused her to start scrambling and everything, and all of a sudden there's a brand new email chain, and I've never had a problem with that again, except for now she's unbearably sweet, quote unquote, very smiley and friendly, and I just, she looks like a barracuda when she's smiling, so I really stay away from her. 2 tips that I have for non-white people in general. I personally don't like to give more than 70% of myself and my time to my job. I figure out ways to do my job efficiently and effectively so that I can do it very well in a very short period of time. Of course, sometimes they give you extra work, but I've figured out a way to maneuver around that as well. So I would recommend not being John Henry, but actually just giving as little of yourself as possible. I think oftentimes non-white people, especially black people, make the mistake of giving much, much more than they're capable of giving, and then are disappointed when that inevitably doesn't work in their favor. And also, I would say, Mr. Fuller is talking about this too. They can get rid of you at any time, but make it very difficult to replace you. I have a friend actually who's a psychologist, and she's a black female. She specifically went after specialties when she was in school that she knew very few people had, and as a result, she's in demand not because white people really like her, but because she has certain skills and certain specialties that are needed for federal compliance in some cases. So she's able to parlay that into a really lucrative career. And I would say just even in my situation, the trajectory keeps on changing because they're finding that I'm very difficult to replace. Of course, my trajectory has not changed. I'm still looking for a new plantation. That's all I have, and I will mute my line. Thanks for listening.
Keeping it codified in Wisconsin. Spectacular. Great suggestion in my view, and not contradictory. I know Dr. Welsing has said frequently, try your best. That right there works against racist man, racist woman, racist child. To have any black female in the universe, any black male in the universe trying their best at something constructive, that right there is working towards universal man, universal woman. You can do that on the job, and at the same time, I don't need to give 1,000%. I can do my best and get these tasks done and not feel like I have to, give every ounce of myself to this job. Like, absolutely not. I think that is spectacular advice, just remembering that we are in a system of white supremacy, and not contradictory at all, in my opinion, making it difficult. That's absolutely correct. They can decide to get rid of you anytime. That's what the system of white supremacy means, but I am going to be very competent. So, you might have to hire 3 people if you let me go to make up for the 70% of myself that I give here on a daily basis, just because I'm competent and efficient. I am such a huge fan. Efficiency. Strive for efficiency, where we are not wasting time. The system of white supremacy, it steals so much time from non-white people, and has so many of us, when we don't understand white supremacy, racism, we don't understand whites, we waste so much of our time on nonsense because that benefits racists. We waste so much of our Black Panther. Marvel's Black Panther, make sure I say it correctly. We waste a lot of time on nonsense, being really, really miserly, efficient with our time. I think that works against racism, white supremacy right there. And great job with this new era and doctoring technology. Make sure you have your originals and asking questions. I'm such a big advocate. Asking questions and not even making accusations. That's something I think point Mr. Fuller makes often. You don't have enough, we victims of white supremacy don't have enough power to, go around talking tough talk like we got a lot of reinforcements behind us. As such, you don't want to be in a position of making allegations coming in to a meeting. And Susan, I think you doctored this email. You don't want to come from there. Just, you could ask a question. And it seems that was more than enough to get the problem resolved. Really make an effort to not make accusations on the job, just asking questions and following logic based on evidence. Folks, if we missed anybody completely, mediation, anyone with mediation experience, if you have it, if you listen to the archive, if you want to write in, that would be grand too. But anyone that we missed completely, if you have a hand up, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, caller in Florida, who are eagerly waiting for the update. We even had your commentary from last week as our intro to make sure everybody would be up to date on the latest antics of the warden and how she responded. I think we had our cliffhanger after your question of would you be going through this if you were a white person after the sabotage and stealing of the keys and all of this. The question, and then I think if I remember correctly, the warden took the whole week off. Didn't just take July 4th, took the whole week off because of the stress and strife that she's been going through on the job. Is that more or less in the ballpark of the update?
Yes, sir. That is very accurate. And like that meeting that took place, to start out with that, it was a lot of nervous white people standing in a circle in the department that I work in. And the white woman, as I said, she steps out and she says with a smile, "Will somebody just say something?" And then I was standing behind the guy that said he was going to Google the term fair, and he never got back to me on that. So maybe he found out the white definition, and he has been trying to be very nice, I guess, every time he's passing by, trying to speak and say hey or whatever. So just in a codified way, I just say hey, just right along with it. And the clerk, he says, "Well, I'm going to be the one presiding over the meeting because she, well, I'm not going to say her name, but she is very in much distress because she has hired all of these new people and she just decided to just take the whole week off." And one thing that was interesting was that he announced all of the new people. It was at least 4 new people, and I'm suspecting that came from at least 3 or 4 months ago when I had pointed out they forgot to introduce the black female, and she would allow the supervisor to do it, but the person presiding over the meeting did it this time. So I think they were taking notes on my prior activity. As far as the warden, she avoided me a couple of days, and then all of a sudden I had went into the office because I needed to get a signature. So I had asked her, was like the other person, the administrative male person, white man, was he in his office? And she was like, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." I was like, "What? Like, come on. What happened? Like, you addressed me as yes, sir 2 times." I don't know. Maybe, I guess they had talked to this person. So, but other than that, she just been kind of just speaking to me and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just never really experienced that. But she hadn't, not as far as I know, she hadn't really been like directly hostile toward me lately. But I'm still suspicious. But another thing I was mentioned in the meeting was that the clerk, he says, "Well, it's about that time we're going to start working on policy. So if anybody has any suggestions, you can just come and let us know if there's anything that needs to be updated with our policy." So I've never heard of that either. This person has been in his term for at least about almost 2 years, and he hadn't finished the handbook yet. So why is it that after I send this email, we have a meeting and now they're talking about if anybody if anybody has any comments or any kind of suggestions on what we should put in a policy, just come and let us know. So I just feel like that was directed at a certain few amount of black people, maybe me and a couple of other black females, maybe another black male. I'm thinking about 5, 6 black people. And it's two other things I wanted to quickly point out that, like, I've been training a white woman to do my jobs for when I go on my vacation just to get a break. And she kept using this term that, and I know this is a popular one. I don't know if this is in the word guide. She said she's been getting rusty. And like I had looked up the word rust, and rusty, like it's like dark brown or orange or metal or whatever it is. So I don't know if that could be another term maybe to look out for if anybody on the line or you guys. Maybe white people are going to be using that term or have been using that, putting it in circulation. And there was another incident where there was a tragic arrangement. There were 6 offspring of a black female and white man. And they were in the research area. And I asked her, I said, well, can I help you with something? And she says, well, I just need to go fill out this restraining order. And she came to sit down at the table. So we're just supposed to allow them to fill out the injunction paperwork. And the children, they were being very, I guess, just very energetic, very loud. And they couldn't really keep them quiet pretty much. They were, I guess, bored and trying to color and stuff. And the youngest child, her name is Storm for some reason. They kept calling her Storm, Storm, and she's crying out for her white dad or whatever. So it was one of her sisters. She was coloring a picture, and she walks up to the white dad, and she says, hey, I colored a black girl and her white boyfriend, a 6-year-old, like a, I don't know, I guess what, mixed person, a mulatto, I think that term was used. So I had noted that. I had wanted to share that. And that's the only thing I have right now. And thanks for allowing me to share.
Much obliged. Tragic indeed. I do not have my word guide. I'm not sure. If I had to wager, I would say I don't think the term rusty is in the word guide, but I don't have my word guide. Flood, still displaced. If any of the folks that are with us live, if you have your word guide and it's in arm's reach without too much trouble, if you want to take a gander to see if rusty is in the word guide, that would be interested. I do not think it's in there, though. As for, I guess, the continued fallout from you asking questions after you were maligned and mistreated by the warden, racist woman on the job, that, at least in my view, like you were saying, you have not had this type of experience before, where a white person not just sir once, but doubles. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When you go into an office, having not had that sort of experience before, and some whites seeming nervous when it's time to come and have you present for a conversation. Just in my view, like that sort of just extreme change in how whites are conducting themselves, that speaks volume to me about the importance, the power of following logic, counter-racist logic, not being emotional, because his position as a black person victim of white supremacy didn't change. All of that is still true. He doesn't have an army with him, but just following logic, asking questions. You can do quite a bit to neutralize racist man, racist woman on the job. Now, that doesn't mean that they, can't fire him tomorrow. We're still in the system of white supremacy, but at least for the time being, they have been somewhat mitigated on the job. I'm sure that they're doing all kinds of plotting and scheming, but at least for the time being, racist man, racist woman, somewhat neutralizing it. At least for me, goes back to what I've said consistently. They enjoy terrorizing us most when it's we got this nigger totally confused. They have no idea what's going on. When it seems like they might have some grasp and they're composed enough to ask questions. They're not just yelling and ranting and raving and cursing. Where's the keys at? Oh no. Would I be treated this way if I was white? And waiting for, like, come on. That is not as much fun at all. I think Mr. Fuller calls that driving the cost of business way up and taking a lot of fun. Right? They love mistreating the niggers and having fun doing it. You take a lot of the fun out. Calm, I'm not upset, asking questions, following logic. That is not fun at all for racist man, racist woman. Any refinements, anything looking back on this last, I mean, this has been going for 6 months, man. If we go all the way back to when she didn't name the new black female employee, that's like the beginning of the year. Anything you would refine, anything that you look back, you're like, I would do this differently this time around.
Oh, that's a good question. As far as I know, I wouldn't. I don't know if there was anything that I would change up really. Maybe I have to think on that a little more.
That is always advisable. I think great illustration. That was in the audio clip for the meeting where you were going to address the email and you said, could you give me a few moments? Took time, got the email, and then had the meeting. Is that the way it went? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, because that was when my supervisor, she had asked me, and she was polite or whatever, because she didn't know what was going on, and I had been going through this at least about maybe like a day or two before this, and I figured the warden would try to put my name into it. So she was like, "Did you know anything about this?" So I was like, "Oh, here we go." So I said, "Could you give me a few seconds, please?" And then she said, "Oh, sure. You know, I'll be in the office. You let me know." So I had waited about at least about a good 45, 50 seconds. So like that was on, I think that was on a Tuesday, and by that Friday, I had typed that email up. So, and then the thing was that on that first email that the warden sent, it was on June 14th that they were supposed to have somebody do the job, and 2 to 3 weeks later, they brought my name into it. And I said, hey, like they already had some kind of a personal meeting about, you know, the people who's supposed to be getting this job done didn't get it done. So I'm like, why my name being brought into it? And then as a white person, she sent me an email saying that, hey, this person, the warden, she sent this to me. I don't know why she didn't include you. So I guess she revealed some, it was an email message she forwarded to me, and it was saying that these 2 people were going to come do it. So that's probably why she didn't send it to me. Because it was the people that she initially had in mind to do the job in the first place. But she was saying, well, you know, you're still, I guess, a part of the records management, I guess, in some way. But I thought I was supposedly transferred to official records 2 years ago, and I worked 5 years under my other supervisor. So I think some obfuscation going on right there, and no paperwork was produced to show, I guess, some kind of a clause or something about how these certain jobs apply to me. I just think they just couldn't really come up with nothing when, as you said, followed logic when I typed the email up. But yeah, like the clerk, been very, very nice, very pleasant, and with her especially. And I think they are very, very afraid to see that my mother works at the other courthouse. I know they've been avoiding her as well. So yeah, that's a major part of the update.
Follow logic works well in my view. On the job, racists they enjoy and look for victims, gonna be emotional, respond to whatever they say easily so they can get their laugh for the day. Logic, as I said, it takes a lot of the enjoyment out for racist man, racist woman, and racist child. Let's see. Are there folks that we missed, Ivy? Did you have commentary that you wanted to get in? Ivy, did you have a hand up also?
I spoke earlier. Yes, but I spoke earlier because weren't you going to people who hadn't spoken?
Yes, ma'am. We have like 20 minutes left. I did see you. Your hand went back up, so we'll go ahead and get you in, and we should be able to nab anybody else. I think there might be one other hand. I'm not sure. I'll double check, but we should have ample time to make sure we don't miss anyone.
Okay, yeah, I just had to call back in because it was a lot of distortion in the line with the vote line. So I just called on my regular phone. I wanted to mention to Stacy in the UK who said that she suffers from insomnia, and ID2, and Roz, regular caller, miss you, Roz, shout out to you. He told me about melatonin, which is the natural hormone that we have in our bodies that help us fall asleep, and you can buy that in vitamin form. And I don't know how many milligrams it goes up to, but I know about 3 milligrams helps me. You can start out with 1 and kind of increase to see if that helps you. Some people help, some people it doesn't. I know Swanson Vitamins, I think it's .com or something, or you can even just probably Google Swanson Vitamins. They have them pretty cheap, or if you know of even a black-owned business that sells vitamins, try to get it from them. I wanted to say to the person who came in number 2, congratulations with that. And I think, if it wasn't for the thief, you probably would come in number 1. And I really wish you the best with that. And I'm glad that you haven't let her pettiness and theft and all of that distract you from the main goal, which is ultimately to make your living. As far as the caller who just spoke, who in Florida, who just did just an incredible job. I think that this is like a timeout. What they're doing right now, kind of like in a basketball game, it's kind of like a timeout while the team kind of gets their bearings together and strategizes on what their next move is going to be, because they're struggling right now. And I think they don't know what to do with you right now. I think they don't know what to do with the person who asks those kind of questions and who can expose wrongdoing and even expose the nature of the wrongdoing without, for lack of words, name calling, or without calling you something directly. You never called anyone a racist, but apparently they clearly understood that you knew that they were behaving in a racist manner, and they're stumbling all over their words to the point where they're saying words that aren't even words. And the question that you asked, would this happen to me if I wasn't a white person? It actually reminds me of that shirt that's out right now. Please treat me like I'm a white person, or please respect me like I'm a white person, if those are still available. And I wanted to quickly say to the Codify software developer that her commentary was incredible. I found it very informative tonight, and I was glad also that recently she talked about her son again and his just codified behavior. I was thinking about that pretty much the same night that she brought it up again, and I hope that she continues to share that, and that was it, and I'll mute my line. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate that, Ivy. Did we have anybody that we missed completely who had commentary that they wanted to share? Any folks who had a hand up that we have missed totally? I'll give out the number again, 641-715-3640, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Anybody that we missed totally?
Yes.
I think we nabbed everyone. Was that Ivy?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. It's Red. My voice kind of went out. I just wanted to quickly say I have the word guide, and I don't see Rusty in here. It goes from loyalism to rules, regulations, rules of war, etc. So I just wanted to share that, and I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Much obliged for the update. Yeah, I didn't think Rusty was there. Although I do think the logic of that from the caller in Florida in terms of someone saying that I am rusty, saying that to imply that they don't know how to do something or that their expertise in an area has eroded because they haven't been doing it for a while. That's still associated with a color that is dark, not white. That makes logical sense. I see. I think Mr. Fuller would see the logic of that. Stacy, did you have commentary?
Yeah, just to thank Ivy for her suggestion on the melatonin. I will try that. I haven't. But yes, anything to help is much appreciated. So I will follow up with that. Gus, I just wanted to add something about policies, if there's time. Can we do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because I mean, you always advise people to refer to the policies or the company handbook in advance of starting a job. And I guess for those of us who've already joined and, encouraging us to go through and read the document. I just wanted to add on to that suggestion or that advice, I guess, to talk about how to use or how to read them. And it may be obvious, but I guess it wasn't necessarily obvious to me, that when, I don't care how wonderful things are, when you just get the job offer and you're in your early phase of that employment and everything is going well, or even if you're starting to read the policy during your time already in employment, I would read it from the perspective of, this is a document that, yes, might be prepared to help staff operate within the organisation. However, it is a document that is produced to help the organisation, the management in the organisation, owners or any other type of organisation, get rid of staff should there be any problems. And I think when you read it with that critical framework, then I think even if the words in those documents sound very supportive of individuals as employees, I think you'll get a better perspective on how you are actually processing that information. And so, it's reading each section, whether that could be to do with timekeeping, as has been mentioned today, and cross-referring to any other sections of the document that might have a bearing on that particular matter. And I think that is incredibly important because, for example, if you are being told that there are certain flexibilities or certain concessions that can be made. I don't know, I'm going to use an example, this isn't a true one, but flexible working. It might be useful for you to look at that against any disciplinary procedures. These two are not probably not good examples, but I'm just plucking something out of the air. Look at it against this section on disciplinary procedures, and does the wording under flexible working get contradicted by the wording under disciplinary procedure? Because even if it doesn't appear so on the surface, managers, particularly those with unscrupulous intentions, will use that wording to suit their purposes. So I just offer that to people as a way of reviewing the documents at any point in your employment, whether it's before you join, whether that's before you've even applied for the job, during the recruitment process, once you've been offered the job, or when you're on your job, and certainly before embarking on any kind of grievance process. And I know the word grievance is to be avoided. I would say in my situation, I didn't use the term grievance or complaint when I first raised my issues with management. I was made to go through a grievance process. I was told that was the process. So I'm sure that there are examples of where management has solved problems without going down or forcing people to go down that route. However, in my instance, I was told that I would have to do that if I wanted the issues that I raised formally addressed. So I guess I was, what is the term that the person from the Florida courthouse uses, rock and a racist pace or whatever. I can't remember the term he used, but that was the situation I was in. But yeah, just in terms of the policies, I would just add on to previous advice and just say, read those documents with a critical mind and with the perspective that this document is a document to help as unscrupulous employer practicing justice against any individual employee, particularly non-white ones, and that might be a more useful framework for how you then operate going forward. I'll meet my line, Gus.
Great commentary from Stacy in the UK. Absolutely. These are the rules, the hows of how we are going to get rid of you if push comes to shove, as they say, in the workplace. And I thought the commentary from the caller in Florida at the courthouse, when he said that after he, raised his question about, injustice, subversive activity in the workplace, for them to have a meeting and ask, does anyone have suggestions on our policy and procedure? I have never heard that in a workplace where a manager, supervisor, anyone has come in and asked, do we have suggestions, input on the policy and procedure? Like, never. If anyone, my suggestion, if that does ever happen, I would see if you can come up with at least one suggestion. If you ever get the opportunity to have input, you should, can I give me an evening to review and I'll report back tomorrow. Like, you should have at least one suggestion if they ever give you that opportunity for input on policy and procedure, because that is like, wow, I've never experienced that in my work history. Has anyone been at a job where someone offered you an opportunity to make edits to policy and procedure? I didn't think so. That would be a memorable day on the plantation. The overseer comes out and asks the slaves, do y'all have any recommendations on how this here plantation is operated? Like, what? Like, that is unheard of in my experience. But if you are asked, give me a day, you should have at least one, if not several, at least one, if they give you that opportunity. Any other folks have suggestions, comments they want to get in?
Maybe here?
Yes, ma'am, Ivy.
Okay, when nobody else is going to go on, I definitely, I wanted to say to the caller in Florida, thank you for the word about a rusty, because it really makes me think about, okay, man, I did not think of that word at all. And immediately when he said it, I thought about, what color it is and things of that nature. And it makes me think, what other words am I overlooking? So it's going to help me to pay even closer attention. I mean, these races, they really have the language on lock for their particular type of system, which is, terrorism based on skin color. And to the person who won who came in number 2, with that race soldier and how she keeps on stealing. She just keeps on stealing, and it's like, whites love to say that they got what they are through how hard work, even though they call themselves white all day long, knowing good and well that they're not white. So they got that white card, that white card. Plus, they're doing all this stealing, and they have a lot of different incompetencies on the job where, you know, black people and other non-white people are having to train them, and they, you know, take all these smoke breaks. I mean, there's a lot of things that show that they don't have a lot of hard work, and that ultimately they got where they are from terrorism. So much for all this. I got where I am because of hard work, and that was it. I'll mute my line.
Indeed. They work hard, mistreating Negras. Absolutely. Tirelessly. I did want to make sure that I get in from yoga class, the making sure that you have a circumference that you have established about what you're going to speak about. What I mean when I say that, you go on jobs and sometimes they might ask questions. We had an exercise. We had to pick, I'm going to give it to you the way they explained it to us. We had to pick a joyful moment to share that happened in the past 24 hours. That's the way it was explained, whatever you mean when you say joyful. Now, I would think, or other people, they talked about, you know, their child and things they did with their family and intimate details about their life. I said immediately, absolutely not. The circumference, this is going to be confined to yoga-related topics, subjects, themes. Like, we're not going to get very far from what I was doing related to yoga. Like, if I'm sharing about something, it is not going to be about friends, family, personal life. Like, I already told you, palpable disdain at one level, or at minimum, I am not treated as if I were a white person. So no, I'm not sharing a whole lot of details about my intimate feelings and thoughts. My joyful, what did I share? I shared yoga class. I talked about the yoga class I took and what I enjoyed from that. And that's all it's ever going to be when it's time to share, because we have to do what they call personal shares. When you get to the end of class, if you're the instructor, you're supposed to give a detail from your life. It's going to be, well, that would perhaps change if I was teaching to black people. But for the time being, it's all going to be related to things that happened on the mat. And I would encourage you all to do the same thing. You already have an established boundary about these are things that I'm willing to talk about. If it's chat time and, you know, we have to make what they call small talk, these are things that I'm willing to talk about. These are things that I am not willing to talk about. You already have that firmly established. And I'd say you should be real stingy about what information you want to share with whites. Let's see. I have other things, but I'll leave it at that. Hopefully I'll have more time to talk about yoga. There were technical issues with the uploads. I think maybe the two most recent, or maybe even the three most recent broadcasts still are not uploading to iTunes. They are available at the Black Talk Radio Network and are being uploaded to SoundCloud today. I almost got everything current there. This episode will be uploaded, you know, give us an hour or so and it should be up. But SoundCloud, Black Talk Radio Network, Mr. Fox has the content at YouTube. Hopefully this issue, which is not on my end, will be corrected shortly, and the iTunes archives will be updated. I know some of the archives were corrected where I think race soldiers had interfered and caused disturbances with some of the archives where they were inaccessible. I think some of that has been corrected as well for archives going back to like 2015 and such, way back, relatively speaking. If you have questions about things, content, archived content, guest suggestions, gripes, general confusion, feel free to drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. Workplace racism, certainly if you have suggestions. If you have experience with mediation, untiljustice@gmail.com, and we can read your commentary on the broadcast for next Thursday. We'll be here tomorrow. Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, my favorite book all time. 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Again, it's an hour earlier because aforementioned yoga teacher training. We'll be here Saturday. The compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, normal time. We'll catch up on news, what has gone down the past 7 days, and Sunday, Global Sunday Talk on Racism. We'll hear how the folks in England are moping about their World Cup loss and white. Stacey, have you seen Humans on Channel 4 as we wrap things up? Maybe we lost her. I'll make sure to ask the English listeners on Sunday. One of our listeners was curious about British television program that's very popular and remind me of Dr. Kevorkian's work, Color Monitors.
Hi, Gus.
Oh, she's here.
I haven't. Sorry. Yeah, I was just I couldn't again. No, I haven't, but I saw it in your email actually, so I'm going to make an effort to watch at least one episode. I have heard of it, but I've never watched it.
Okay. Well, got one response. Reading is more important than watching television, Dr. Welsing. With that, much obliged for everyone tuning in. I hope it was a constructive investment of your Thursday evening / Friday morning. We'll be back in about 24 hours. Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. Dr. Welsing, many others would strongly encourage. Dr. Bobby E. Wright, his work was mentioned, Psychopathic Racial Personality and Other Essays. I think he also would co-sign, let's take excellent care of our brain computers so that we can think of new concepts, solutions to the problem, racist man, racist woman, racist child. Certainly, let's be sober, and if you're going to be out and about in a vehicle, buckle up every time, driver or passenger. Let's do everything we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Mm-hmm. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.